You're gonna see some serious shit.
It is the future. The year 2015. Okay, it's not as cool as we were promised, but it's not that different really. Instead of Jaws 19, we get Terminator Jenny CCs. It's the same thing really. We need to make a future for ourselves. A future where film lovers make film podcasts about why they love film. Where we stay positive no matter what the next batshit crazy Fantastic Four reboot rumor is. Come on guys, Star Wars and Mad Max are coming back, Brad Bird's got another movie out, Pixar have too. Stick with us folks and you'll always see the bright side of movies. Don't mind the title, it's just ironic. Welcome to Movie Moan 2015! Well, hello everybody, and welcome to what I like to call the penultimate Movie Moan. Not by design, unfortunately, but just by the way that life unfolds. Both myself and my right arm, Mr. Jamie Williams, are both moving on to wonderful and exciting opportunities out there in the world. And it's just crazy. I mean, it's the way that our lives have changed in just the last couple of weeks has just been absolutely bloody nuts, and it's really, really exciting. I think I can speak for Jamie as he goes off to his opportunities and I go into mine, that we're both really, really fucking excited about what's happening, and the only sad consequence is on you guys, and I'm sorry about this, but I'm not going to be able to do full shows all the way up until the end of the year like I was planning to. I mean, we might as well, I don't even know if we officially confirmed it to you, but just to torch you, we might as well let it out the bag now that we were planning to do a show from London on Spectre, and Jamie was going to come over for that at least, and that was going to be really, really exciting. I think we did. I just can't remember. But in any case, I mean, it came very, very apparent over the last couple of weeks that was never going to happen, unfortunately. And it's sad, but at the same time, it is life. Although I will say, folks, spare a thought for me, because where I'm going, Spectre's not out to November 20th. So when you're sitting there in your comfy theatre enjoying the movie, you know, just spare a thought to your Uncle Phil, because I won't have seen it yet, and I won't pirate. I will not pirate. I've got to be honest with you, Jamie. The evil part of me hopes it's shit, so I don't have to feel too bad about it.
I'm not. Dread's not the word, but
it doesn't look great. I'm not.
No, I think the problem is that Skyfall was just it fired on too many cylinders for a lot of people.
Now, I mean, well, I'm not expecting any kind of jump the shark moment where Dave Bautista falls in love with a girl with pigtails or anything like that. But I'm just expecting that.
But we don't know that.
We don't. Matt does. He's read it. Should have asked him about
I
that.
have it. I just haven't read it yet.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I mean, you, as a Bond fan, you think we'd be chomping at the bit. You'd think there'd be no power on it that would stop Jamie from reading that thing, but it's just like, well, maybe it's because we're just too old for this shit. I don't know what it is anymore, Jamie.
Also that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to be completely honest with you folks, we're getting out the game. We are. I mean, I always made the agreement that we were going to do one final year of shows because you had to do it on the year that Star Wars returned. That was the rule that I had. I just wanted to do one more year of quality shows for you. And we may come back in the future to do, specials and things like that.
Box office shows are still fun. We still look forward to those.
We do. Very much so. But as far as the regular grind of it, I mean, the kind of shows that we used to do, where we do it every week, it would just be an audio show, it would just be a podcast. Of course, it was huge fun always getting together with the gang, but I can't for the life of me imagine doing a show like that now, at the age that I am. I mean, James said it best.
I can't imagine, with all due respect to other shows, I don't imagine how any of these guys can still sit here and have the same conversations about shit that they have for years.
But regardless of what kind of topics we're talking about, folks, we're really talking about the same things in a different wrapper. There will always be a Fantastic Four, or a Fant Four Stick, whatever you want to call it. There'll always be a movie like that every year. Maybe not to that exact degree, but there'll always be that kind of movie.
Well, I'll use an example off the top of my head. I mean, we're bitching about how Apocalypse looks.
Don't forget, and this is the way that I rationalise it. I mean, and I've been guilty of it too. We all have in our youth that we talk about these things and we make these comments within very closed communities.
Yeah, but the problem is the community is getting older, and we're still talking about this. Me and you are getting out because we're fucking adults. We're just wait, we're 30. Why are we talking about this shit? We can still enjoy these movies, but just get the fuck out of the field about all this crap. Just move the fuck on, man. Go live a life.
Well, it's not that specific. I mean, my reasons are very, very specific. I can't speak for Jamie, but for me, this has always been a form of entertainment to provide to other people. I know that I have a certain kind of voice which projects well on radio, is kind of different than a lot of what's out there. I know the kind of thing that I would like to listen to, and I would... It's going to sound really egocentric, but...
Well, you're optimistic, but also, again, you're not a bandwagon jumper. You've actually got your own opinion.
Well, sure. But what I'm saying is that
most of these shows don't have opinions. It's whatever everyone else thinks. We think that too. That's basically as much they say otherwise. No, that's it.
That happens.
It happens. It's most of these shows, man.
But all I know is that as a form of entertainment, I want to make sure that you guys get the best. And I do have a certain set of high standards for it. And I know, and I'm very conscious of the fact that if we keep talking about the next Star Wars story, then I'm going to get very, very tired very, very quickly. And already have started to. And you guys don't deserve that. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say... Because I can promise you, one of the reasons, Jamie, why I want to review The Force Awakens is not just because everyone's going to do it and everyone's going to have opinion. No, fuck that. It's about because I feel like if I'm reviewing The Force Awakens, I'm also in a lot of ways, I'm reviewing every Star Wars movie that Disney's going to make in the future. And I could just make that one opinion and there it is, In the same way that, if we reviewed Iron Man, I remember all those years ago, and in a lot of ways, at that time, even though we didn't know it, we reviewed every Marvel movie. I know you certainly did, because your opinions have always been, very steadfast on it, that it's good, it's fun, it's fine, I'll probably never watch it again, And
Right.
and that's true of most of them, and I feel that's probably going to be true of Star Wars. Even though I'm really excited about the movie, and I'm sure I'm going to love it, and if they're good, I'll watch every one of them.
We were not to... toot our own horn here, but we're one of the few people who came out immediately and said we don't like this idea of putting a Star Wars movie out every year. It's a bad idea. You're taking away from the uniqueness of Star Wars. Is not Marvel. Okay, it's apples and oranges. It is. So you can't treat them the same way, and that's why all these other studios that have tried to replicate the Marvel formula have failed miserably, because they think, we'll just do an expanded universe, a big cinematic world, and we'll have the characters connect, and they they haven't worked yet.
So what about you, Jamie? How are you feeling as we I know it sounds so final, but Jamie assures me that he'll be back for the Christmas show as well, and then we'll properly bow out. But how are you feeling? I just feel like we're Bilbo and Gandalf just sitting on the bench, just puffing away, getting high, watching the clouds, making up the clouds, just letting life pass us by.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, man, that's a good analogy.
Life is good.
There you go, man. Two old farts.
That's what we are. That's the point, folks. That's what we are. I'm 32. Jamie's 31. Yeah, you are. Just behind me. I mean, I don't know how you folks feel, but hopefully, you're still excited. But if you're in the game, and I don't know how many.
We started doing the podcast when I was 23.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I did it was as a form of therapy, because at that time I was in a really shit job and I was in a bad patch in my life, and I just wanted to be cheered up and talk to people. And I didn't have any friends at the time that I could really talk to about movies and stuff, so it was fortune, a bit of luck, and a bit of fate. But I think what's really changed more than anything is that as I listen back to those old shows, and as I look back at the old articles that I did, I find it fascinating how most of the really, really meaty topics that we talked about and repeated to discuss were about the movies that we just didn't know were ever going to get made. Whether it was the next installment of a franchise or something like The Watchmen, you'd have those conversations multiple times about The Hobbit. Is The Hobbit actually going to get made? Are they actually going to make that Terminator sequel? Are they actually going to fucking get Batman vs Superman, or just another Superman movie, period? Things like that. And now I can't think of many examples of that kind of thing that we can talk about. I mean, a Jurassic World, that's another example. Were they ever going to make a Jurassic Park 4?
We're pretty much to the point where we're down to the fact that it's like, well, okay, are they going to make a Don Quixote movie? So that's how far we are.
Not exactly a geek topic. Well, no.
I mean, it'll be a geek topic if someone if a geek director helms it, if Christopher Nolan says my next movie is Don Quixote, which would be kind of cool actually. But although incidentally, I'm curious what his next movie. I actually, I would be the guy.
You got a theory about it?
No clue, but I tell you, I think he'd be the guy who would do The Stand justice.
It looks good on a marquee. Nolan and King, boom.
Yeah, man.
That
Nolan
sells.
King, his signature novel, his best work, epic. Yeah, we'll see.
Great, awesome. Right, well, we'll step away from our old farting for a moment, and we'll completely be a hypocrite and talk about some comic book movies and stuff. But it's really, It's really, really exciting, though, because it is not just one final ride for me and Spencer Perry, but also the welcome return of someone we've been wanting to get on Movie Moan 2015 for the longest time. And finally, for our penultimate episode, we're finally able to get him on. But who is it? Let's find out. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a very special and probably very emotional marvelling at the future. The future's on my mind a lot right now because, as you know, it's going to be the last marvelling at the future for a while, the last Movie Moan anything for a while, and I'm moving on to a wonderful career out there in the Far East, the exotic Far East, and it's going to be really interesting. But it's so sad that I have to leave behind this part of the podcast, especially because I just fucking loved every minute of it. I mean, I'm still a huge geek about not necessarily the movies themselves, but I love the mythology. I love the worlds that are being built right now in comic book movies. Having said that, I would be quite happy if the word universe was never used in the English language ever again. Certainly in terms of movie conversations, I am really getting an itch every time I hear somebody say the word universe. But I said, let's do one more show tonight and let's just blow it out. Let's talk about everything, all the big topics that we really wanted to get off our chest one more time before we, well, not close it down, but we will come back for the Christmas show, and we'll see what we're going to talk about then. And more importantly than that, let's make some predictions, because the big running joke on Marveling of the Future has been whatever me and Spencer talk about on the show, literally 40 minutes later, after I've stopped the record button, before I've even got the fucking show up for you to watch, which is the most frustrating part, some news is broken, which either confirms what we said or contradicts it in some way. So let's talk about so many news stories, they can't possibly break in the next hour. And if they do, well, holy shit, the internet will break. Certainly with some of the topics that we're going to talk about. Among them are like, is Zack Snyder going to be knifed in the next hour for daring to speak his mind about certain things? You know, those kind of topics. So here to talk about it and make it extra special, first of all, Mr. Spencer Perry. How are you, Spencer?
I'm doing well. How are you, Phil?
Oh, I'm just honoured to be having one more ride with you.
Yeah.
One
it's
last
like,
ride.
you know, it's the Furious 7 of
That's what I was thinking, man.
Yeah.
And to make it special, I've been talking about bringing the gang back together. I've been wanting to get this guy back for Movie Moan 2015 for the longest time. I think you already know who I'm talking about. You don't even know yet, but I know immediately in your head. Your thoughts are triggered and you're thinking, it can't be. Has he got him? Is it finally happening? Is it all happening? Yes, it is happening, folks. Finally, after a long, long journey, I would like to introduce the welcome return of, I'm now proud to say, I've literally just found this out, writer for Cracked, Mr. Randall Maynard. Hello, Randall.
I'm here, bitch. Hey, Phil, sorry I called you a bitch. I just got excited.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Randall is speaking from the from magical tablet technology tonight. So if he ever sounds a little bit like he's speaking from a space helmet, that's why. But we're going to make the best of it. I've got him here. I ain't going to lose him now. So let's move on. Now, I just thought to actually break ourselves in here, let's get straight to the topics, guys. And I thought I'd start with just the one that, fuck it, I'm going to be selfish, the one I want to talk about the most, the one that's the most fun to talk about anyway. Phase 4. Like, I know Phase 3 has not even started yet, but the problem with Phase 3 is we know everything that's going to happen in it, and I just want to talk about what no one's talking about right now. I want to talk about a phase where we literally have no information, where it's all speculation, and I reckon if we predict on the movies that Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4 might contain, we're bound to get one of them right, at least. So I've got some predictions here, but I'm going to kick off. Spencer, you had time to think about this. What do you think Phase 4's going to contain movie-wise?
You know, when they came out last October and did their little song and dance where they revealed all of Phase 3, they did a thing where they announced, oh no, Ant-Man isn't the start of Phase 3 anymore, it's the end of Phase 2. And then when they got to the ending of Phase 3, they were like, okay, Infinity War Part 2, that's the ending. And then the Spider-Man deal happened 2 months later, and that totally changed the release calendar for about 4 of the movies. So it pushed Inhumans past Infinity War Part 2. So I think they're going to end up doing the same thing where Inhumans, if that movie even gets made, will be the start of Phase 4 and not the end of Phase 3. Because why would you do Infinity War Part 2 and then say, oh wait, there's like one more thing we need to talk about before this is over? However, new movie-wise, I do think that there's going to be some sort of team-up movie. I don't know if they'll call it Marvel Team-Up, what it is going to be, but I think it's going to be an Ant-Man and Wasp movie. That's what I think. I think we're going to see that in Phase 4.
Yeah, I think actually, you know what, that didn't even occur to me, but it's going to be an awful shame after they cock tease us like that, if they're not actually going to do anything with the Wasp. That makes sense. Randall, you want to throw any movies into this mix here?
For Phase 4, the movie I really want to see, I want to, because like they can't go any more cosmic, they can't get any bigger. So you can't go ahead, you can't go up, you got to go sideways. You got to go Squirrel Girl. You need the Squirrel Girl movie.
With special guest star Jero the Mayor Boy. I suppose. Even though that doesn't even make any sense because he's a DC character. Yes, no, I'll go.
What are you even talking about, Phil? What's going on here?
Hey, you brought it up. I didn't even know about him until you mentioned it.
Maybe it's a backdoor for the new Warriors movie. I don't know. I don't care. I just want Squirrel Girl in there.
Fine, let's do it. Well, I'll throw in some into the mix. I mean, I was thinking about this in a slightly different angle from you guys. I completely understand, well, one of your logics. But what I was thinking about was that, okay, surely a phase, if it's going to work, if it's meant to be a phase, then surely there should be an overarching theme here. There should be an overarching story. So Phase 1 is Avengers Assembled. I thought Phase 2 was supposed to be Avengers Disassembled, but I don't really think it was. I'm not even sure.
Sort of.
Well, a little bit. Yeah, I know that it certainly was going that way with what happens to S.H.I.E.L.D. So yeah, there's part of it there. And Phase 3 is everything or nothing. Basically. So I thought, and I know how much Kevin Feige loves Star Trek 4, so I really think that Phase 4 is going to be a kind of voyage home kind of thing, in that all of our reoccurring characters who've been established and have fought Thanos in the Infinity War are going to end up not dead, although some of them I'm convinced will be, but the ones that aren't will probably be split to the four corners of the universe and will have to find their way home, leaving home itself undefended, and we're going to have to get some people to fill in the void. Now, of course, I would have said before that I really, really wanted that Thunderbolts movie, but I am having to relent, having seen Suicide Squad's trailer, that I really just don't think that they're going to do it. If they were ever going to do it at all, I certainly don't think they're going to do it now. It's going to seem like such an afterthought. So what's going to fill the void? Because what I'm looking for here is new characters in a completely different perspective than we've ever seen before in the Marvel movies, something that's going to fill the void, something that's going to feel new and fresh. It has to be the Runaways. We've got to get this. Yeah, I know they've got a lot of TV on the brain right now, but I've read through Runaways several times. It's one of the few Marvel books that I've read multiple times and love every time. It is a film to me. I don't buy Runaways as a TV show. To me, that just doesn't fit. I want it as a movie. I want it as several movies, actually. The initial run by Brian K. Vaughan is a movie to me, and it's hard to screw up. I know they already have a draft of it written by Drew Pearce, and I know they're going to go back to it at some point. What better way than you hope in Phase 4 there's no heroes, and you bring in the Runaways, and it's the kids who've grown up on these Marvel stories, these heroes that have come, and now, they find out their parents are supervillains, a group of supervillains called the Pride, who are actually making their move, their power play, to take over the planet because, of course, it's defenseless right now. And that way you bring the villains back to a much more small-scale, intimate human thing. And I could talk about the Runaways for far too long than we've got time for, but I feel like that's the way to kick it off. And then you think about what kind of sequels are we going to get based on the characters that are being introduced in Phase 3. And I think what we're going to have here is a situation where we're going to cut back and forth between Earth and cosmic adventures. So I think you start with Runaways, and then you could go to Captain Marvel too. Because I'm pretty sure Captain Marvel... Okay, I'm casting my eye far into the future, but I think they're going to have a hit there. I think they're going to have something special that clicks. And then you could cut back to Earth for Black Panther 2, Panther in New York. I think that would be fun. And then we can cut back to Cosmic for Guardians 3 and finish that trilogy. And for fuck's sake, in Phase 4, if you don't do Planet Hulk, then you're never going to do it. And you have to do it, because that's going to be something we haven't seen. You're not going to kill him. You're going to banish him. He should already be in space, but he isn't. Fine. You've got to do Planet Hulk in Phase 4. And then I think, finally, everyone whose contracts are renewed will come back for the end of Phase 4, which I might as well just call the New Avengers. I don't think calling it Avengers : at that point makes sense, because I feel like at that point the team's going to be so different. Call it the New Avengers and start off. And then we've got a whole stew of Avengers. Happy with that? That makes sense?
How does Squirrel Girl fit into that?
She can be in every post-credit scene in every single one of those movies, just building up We just have a little story arc in post-credit scenes. How about that?
Okay, now I'm totally behind it.
Awesome, great. Green light. Green light. Okay, well, the other question to ask, segueing slightly from that, is about Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now, we're not thinking about it too much right now because it's so far away, and it really feels too far away to me. I really feel like this is one of those ones where they could have brought it out in 2 years and we'd be ready for it. But you're going to do it in 3 years? Absolutely fine with that. It's the opener for summer 2017 in a summer which has got some pretty fierce competition. For starters, Star Wars Episode 8, if it does come out in summer 2017, I know there's some debate about that, but we'll assume it will. There's going to be a Toy Story 4, a Despicable Me 3, a Wonder Woman movie, we'll see. A Spider-Man movie, that's definitely happening. Chris Nolan's new movie, of course, has just been announced. It's going to be hitting to close off that summer. So the question is, in light of all...
Don't forget Pirates of the Caribbean 5, Planet of the Apes 3. There's a couple other ones. It's a pretty stacked summer.
It is a pretty stacked summer. One of those I specifically avoided mentioning, and if you knew me as well as you claimed, Spencer, you wouldn't have mentioned it. But you've ruined my whole evening now. Anyway, so that's not going to be the biggest summer movie of summer 2017. But question is Guardians... I mean, look, this is a movie that people are going to want to see. I'm absolutely convinced at this stage that this movie is going to be so huge that not a single person in the entertainment industry is qualified to estimate the top on it. Just the question is it going to be the biggest film of summer 2017? Spencer?
I'm going to, throw it out there and say yes that it will be, because... not only is it being the first release of the summer already an incredible sign, because for the past however many years, that first release is the one that is probably either going to be the winner or is number 2. And then looking at the calendar for the rest of that summer and even just that month, there's nothing else scheduled until May 17th, and the only thing on that date is the Terminator Genesis sequel, which probably won't happen. And then after that is Star Wars. And, of course, Star Wars is going to be huge. Like, Force Awakens is going to make a lot of money. But between now and Episode 8, there's going to be 2 more Star Wars movies. So by the time Episode 8 comes out, it's still going to make a lot of money, of course, but it's not going to make Force Awakens money. It'll probably top out Rogue One just because it has Star Wars : in the title. It's not, called something a Star Wars story, which it's going to confuse people. It absolutely will. And then the only other big question mark is Spider-Man, but since there have been 5 other Spider-Man movies in the past 14 years, 16, 17 years by that point, I think that one, it'll do fine, but it's not going to do more than Guardians 2, because we still will only have had one Guardians of the Galaxy movie by that point. People will want more. This will be the 6th Spider-Man movie. People are kind of over it.
I know Randall's over Spider-Man. I know he is.
No, I think it's going to be in the top tier, but not the biggest. I think the biggest will still be Star Wars, because there's this rabid sort of lust for Star Wars that I you just can't really beat it. Like Force Friday just happened, and that was like an event. There's no Galaxy Friday.
Not yet.
No, I understand, but I'm gonna side with Spencer on this one. I thought a lot about this, and I thought, well, okay, what about Toy Story 4? Because I don't often get my box office predictions right, but I said in summer 2010, it doesn't matter about Iron Man 2, Toy Story 3 is going to win that summer, and I was right. And Jamie always gives me credit for that. One of the few things I do get credit for. But I'm thinking about Toy Story 4, and there's still that huge gap there where the appetite builds up, and I'm really interested by the story that they're going to tell, which we just learned at D23, which is that what was the one loose plot thread in that movie? What happened to Bo Peep? And apparently we're going to find out, and Woody's going to get her, and that's going to be nice. But it is, and they've said it's a distinctly romantic movie, and I just wonder if it's going to turn a couple of the kids off. I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that, but that's the only thing that gives me reservations about 4. And Star Wars, I was wrestling with this, but I would have said it was going to be the biggest, but the only thing that's given me pause for thought is this isn't going to be Episode 8 after we've had a 3-year gap. to build up the anticipation. It's actually barely, it's literally 5 months after we've seen Rogue One. It's ridiculous. It really is. So there's no chance for these things for the hype to build. This will essentially be Star Wars Part 3 of the new series, and as such the fatigue will start to fill in. Not to mention it's a middle chapter, so it's probably going to be darker and all that bullshit. But yeah, I just feel like people will be like, oh, another Star Wars. Well, I guess I'll see it. But it's not going to be like, oh, Guardians, man, we're going tonight. We're going midnight, So I'm going to say Guardians. I'm absolutely going to say that. I could be wrong, but don't think I am on this one. Yeah, gotta say it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be in the top 3, top 5, whatever of the year, but not right on top.
I don't think it's going to be, just to add on to that, Randall, I don't think it's going to be the biggest of the year. It's so far out, it's crazy, but I'm absolutely convinced that if it's good enough, I don't think anything can touch the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast. What that could do is scary if they get it right.
Yeah, there's potential, but they've kind of did Maleficent even do that well?
It did actually.
Yeah.
It was number 2 for that year.
Yeah, if you call that doing well, then
okay, fine. Maleficent was pretty awful. I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm fascinated though. The idea of seeing these human beings turn into talking inanimate objects, it has the potential to be so terrifying to so many children. I just want to be in the theatre when that happens. When, Kevin Kline picks up a candelabra and all of a sudden it's actually it's got Ewan McGregor's screaming face on it. That's going to be amazing, Okay, so now moving on, we've got another topic here, and this is the one where, we're actually kind of topical because the internet has already kind of beaten us to it. None of this is confirmed yet, but we wanted to talk about it. Let's get it all out here. Let's make a definitive statement. Who is going to play Captain Marvel? Now, the hot tip right now, which is literally just broken in the last couple of hours, is that they are eyeing, apparently the top choice for Marvel is star of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, Rebecca Ferguson. Because as we predicted, she is hot right now and she's going to be picked for something. It was just a question of which one it was going to be. So apparently she's the top choice for Captain Marvel. Just question is, do we agree with it? Spencer?
I still haven't seen Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Fair enough.
I know that's a bad thing, but so I can't really speak to how I think she would do in the role. But it makes sense for Marvel to be looking at her. She was just in a movie that made a lot of money and had a lot of people talking about her performance specifically. So it would make sense that she's on their radar. However, I was talking with a friend about this yesterday, and I still think that the choice is clearly Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones and the Hunger Games movies, because outside of our circles, fans of these sorts of movies and TV shows,
nerds, yeah,
people don't know who Natalie Dormer is. She's not a household name. So Marvel doesn't chase movie stars for these big breakout roles. They are going to create the star themselves when they find the right person for the role. And I think they'll take Natalie Dormer, who hasn't had like a starring role particularly in anything that's front and center, and then they're going to make her Captain Marvel.
Actually, I kind of agree with that. That's a great idea, Spencer. My second choice would be Keegan-Michael Key from Key and Peele. Hear me out. He can play a woman. He does it all the time on the show. He's a good actor. There was a huge missed opportunity not to cast Key and Peele in the new Ghostbusters movie, and I think this would make up for it.
Oh, man. Well, no, it's wow. I don't want to go against you, Spencer, because it's an interesting choice, and the logic makes sound, and obviously your assumption is based, and Vandal's too, that they don't want to go for a movie star here. But just because they haven't done it before doesn't mean that they can't. And I've been wrestling with this, and I was like, look, if they don't want to do that, and they want to follow the the mold of a Chris Pratt type, which would make perfect sense, then yes, they're going to go for somebody like that. But I have felt in my gut the entire time that, you know, for once they might just break that mold and go for someone who is not even a movie star, as in not commanding $20 million paychecks, but somebody who is, has awards recognition, is known for extremely A-type movies, just hasn't been in a big franchise. And I've just been convinced for the longest time that Jessica Chastain is born to play this part. And she actually was going to be in Iron Man 3 in the part that went to Rebecca Hall. And she's been very diplomatic about it and just says, it didn't work out, I was pregnant, but hopefully I get to be in another one of them at some point. Who wouldn't want to be? So I'm just convinced that she's always been on the short list. I get why Rebecca Ferguson is the hot topic. The only problem that I have with Rebecca Ferguson is I've always had in my mind that Carol Danvers is an all-American girl, you know. And Rebecca Ferguson is Swedish. She could do an immaculate British accent, but I don't see her, and maybe she'll prove me completely wrong, because, you know, you can do dialect coaching, but I don't see her as all-American girl, you know, and she doesn't look that way. She looks European. So that's not clicking for me. But she's a great actress. I've seen her in plenty of things, so I'm not going to complain, but yeah, it's Jessica for me. We are split on that, so one of us has got to be right.
They're both more likely choices than Emily Blunt, which is the favorite for anyone that doesn't have an imagination.
Yeah, and Ronda Rousey, of course.
Yeah. Well, my boss made a bet with me that if Ronda Rousey gets the role, he would buy me an Xbox One, so I'm kind of okay with her getting the role, just 'cause it means I get an Xbox One.
Oh, great. $400 brick. Awesome. I'm very happy for you. Sorry, that's just a cheap dig. I'm a PlayStation guy all the way. Okay, right. We're getting on to something now that's very near and dear to certainly me and Spencer's heart, and I'm hoping Randall too. Daredevil. We haven't talked about Daredevil for a while, Spencer. So we know Season 2 is shooting right now. We're very, very excited. We know that Elektra has been cast in the form of Elodie Young, who we've only seen in that G.I. Joe movie, which doesn't fill me with confidence, but we'll see. We'll keep an open mind about that. And we know that John Bernthal is playing Frank Castle, a.k.a. The Punisher. But I've got a concern here, Spencer. I've got a concern here, Randall. I'm concerned that I don't know who's playing Bullseye, so I don't know that Bullseye's even in it, which seems insane to me, because this has got to be, Season 2 has got to be the Elektra saga, and I'm just worried that that Frank Castle is filling in the Bullseye role in some way, only in that he will be the, antagonist in this situation, in this triangle situation between Daredevil, Elektra, and him. And secondly, that he's going to basically take over this show, hijack it, and this whole thing is going to be some 13-episode trailer for a Punisher show that they hope to make. I know that's extremely premature, but I only get sensitive about one geek property, folks, and it's this one. You don't fuck this one up. You haven't so far. You are not going to fuck Daredevil up. I'm not going to allow it. So, Spencer, am I just worrying too much here, or are you concerned too?
I think you're right to worry about that. It's the sort of thing that we're conditioned to worry about if you're a fan of something, and it's been proven time and time again with all of these things that the moment they stop focusing on whatever their story is currently and to shift focus to set up whatever is in the future, it's always bad. And we don't want that for our precious Daredevil. And that sounded like I was making fun of you. I wasn't.
No.
And but I hadn't thought about Frank filling the Bullseye role. I hadn't thought about that. That would completely change the dynamic between Frank and Matt if Frank was the one that killed Elektra. Because when Bullseye does it in the comic book, it's he's taking something from Matt and cementing himself as the central antagonist for Matt's life. But then when you look at Punisher and Daredevil together, like, they don't like each other, they butt heads a lot, but it's because they are so similar, because Matt Murdock is just one bad day away from becoming Frank. Like, there's too much going on that makes them similar, and that's why they don't get along Bullseye and Daredevil don't get along because Bullseye is psychotic. And I feel like if you push Frank over that ledge and make him the character responsible for that sort of thing, you're really messing with the wrong sort of character beats.
Very good point. Randall?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about Punisher taking the role of Bullseye. I hope if that's true that they find a way to tell that story without just making the Punisher an evil psycho.
Right.
That's going to really, that's kind of the opposite of what the show has done for these characters, because I thought the first season did a great job developing Matt as like a human being that I could identify with. And even Wilson Fisk to a certain extent. That would be a shame if Punisher was just written off as some lunatic. But I do think, since the idea is that Punisher is the main enemy for this season, right? Like, that's pretty much confirmed.
Seems like it's going that way. I don't know.
I hope that's the case. I hope he takes at least the Kingpin role, in the sense that he's the character who's going to be haunting Matt throughout the season. I wonder, though, if the Elektra's not just a long setup so that they can kill her in the third season. Because I would rather, if they're going to do that arc, not rush it like they did with the movie, where it was like, oh, you know her for 20 minutes, and a total of, 5 minutes of screen time, and then they kill her, and she becomes Elektra. Then she becomes Elektra, and then they kill her. And then nothing happens.
They can't do that.
It's not a good movie.
I know. It's flawed. I'm not going to talk about that again.
Yeah, my point being, I hope that they do a more drawn-out thing, because they're promising that Kingpin's going to come back. So if they're going to bring Kingpin back, and they're going to do Bullseye, and they're going to do Elektra, maybe they'll do that in Season 3. And in this season, Elektra will just be around as a supporting character. Like Stick, Like, he shows up, but he's not... that story isn't coming into the spotlight yet.
It's an interesting point. I'm wondering if I didn't think about this till Randall just mentioned it, but I'm wondering if there's no way that they're going to kill Elektra, because they want to keep her around until at least they do the Iron Fist show, so they can do all that hand crap, dissolving ninjas and shit, and do all that, and then play all that out, and then they'll kill her after that, and... I don't know, this to steal a line from Godfather, this screws up all my arrangements. I had this plan, and it seems to be falling apart, because they've got a this multi-tiered plan for different shows that are overlapping. I don't know. To answer Spencer's point, I'm not necessarily gonna say that I have a problem with if we're coming at this creation of an antagonism between Matt and Frank. For a completely different reason. Part of that's really exciting, because it's something we haven't seen before, and then because let's be honest, Spencer, you and I and Randall, of course, know how the Frank and Matt relationship plays. We know it's only a matter of time before they both get locked up at Rikers, and then, they develop their relationship from there and that kind of thing. But if you come at it from a different example, and he mows down machine guns Elektra, that's different, and now we don't know what's going to happen, and that's going to be crazy, because we didn't know they were going to kill Ben, and they did. I think they sent a message when they killed Ben. Yeah, it was bullshit, but they did send a message right then and there that we're playing this differently than you think, and I only got pissed off because it screwed up all my arrangements.
We're playing this differently. We're clearly racist. That was fucked up how they killed that character. That was totally unnecessary.
Let's not get into it. It's true. But that does send a message.
Subject around here.
I don't know what's going to happen. It's crazy. More on Daredevil. More on my Daredevil worries when the season comes out. But it's just interesting that, nothing would please me more than they've cast Bullseye. They're just not going to fucking... and it is Jason Statham. I don't give a shit. But they cast him, and they're not even going to fucking tell us who it is. They can do that. They could be cast, and it could be a huge surprise.
I think they're waiting for New York Comic Con. I think they'll announce it then.
Yeah.
Because they did last year. Last year we only knew a handful of the people, and then when they got together for the panel, they announced 6 more characters, and we were like, holy shit, he's in the show too?
And I feel like you need a character like that, because, that's the kind of character that says why Frank's doing what he's doing. You expect me to bring that to justice? You expect me to reason with that? You expect me not to just fucking mow down and brutally murder that psycho? you're gonna arrest him? You're gonna try him? Before by your laws? No, fucking no. Dogs get put down. I feel like you need a character who's a complete loony, Otherwise, like we're talking about, you have, rational criminals who actually have, are human beings in some way, and that makes Frank look like the crazy one. It's interesting, though. It is interesting. This is going to be fascinating. It's going to be a really interesting season, and I don't think there's going to be a middle ground on this one. I feel like, because also Stephen DeKnight's walked away as the showrunner, so it's anyone's game how it's going to go now. Either they fuck up completely, or, as happens a lot in TV shows, season 2's where it really comes into its own, and then it really takes off. Who the hell knows? We'll find out. Alright, folks, well, speaking of that segues very nicely into another thing that's literally just happened. We just got... people call it a teaser trailer. Fuck that. It's a proof of concept teaser trailer for
It's basically the opening credits.
Yes, it is, for Jessica Jones, which looked very nice, by the way,
Right.
which is coming out November 20th. Again, like you say, I guess we're waiting for New York Comic Con until we actually get a trailer for it. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I know nothing about this character beyond a brief description, because my position has always been extremely selfish. Fuck that. Fuck this show. I don't care. I just want more Daredevil. Give me Daredevil every quarter. Can I have that? No, you can't, Phil. Okay, fine. Well, I'll watch this Jessica Jones on November 20th. I'll give it a shot. I'm more intrigued by anything about David Tennant as the Purple Man, because I know the Purple Man from Daredevil comics. But apart from that, I don't know. So, Spencer, help me out here.
Well, Jessica Jones she's a superpowered character, and worked as, a costumed hero for a while, but finds herself down on her luck and ends up just becoming a private eye and working in those sort of cases and helping people that can't be helped by regular people, which is presumably where we're sort of heading in the Marvel Universe, because now that there's people with actual superpowers running around, not on I guess so, on television, because they have the fucking Inhumans on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it's about her, getting drunk and following people for work and getting into bar fights and doing things that you really don't expect from your quote unquote typical female superhero. So it's what I'm expecting from the show is I want them to surprise me. I want them to show me something I've never seen before. And I haven't read all of the Alias, which is the Brian Michael Bendis Jessica Jones book, which it seems like they were taking a lot of inspiration from for the series. But I've read a number of other comics that she appears in, and I'm pretty anxious for this just because it's so different. And that's the only thing I hope for in the rest of the Netflix shows is surprise me. Give me something different. Like make your show as different from Daredevil as Daredevil was from all the other shows.
I'm sold. Well, I'm a little bit more sold now. Thank you, Spencer. Randall, what about you?
I really don't have any expectations for this one. Aren't they kind of like doing a backdoor thing where it's like they're going to introduce Luke Cage and stuff on it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, which is like I kind of would just hold out and watch Luke Cage on his own show before I see him as a supporting character on another show I don't care about. I don't know. I'm not really that interested in this one. I haven't seen any of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. either. Some of the TV shows are they're just a little too, I just don't need that, really. I don't know. I'm just not totally on board with this one.
We never talked about Daredevil with you, though, Randall. I mean, did you binge watch that one?
Yeah, I did. And I watched as much as I could. I watched 2 episodes per day when it came out. And try to get to it as quickly as possible. I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes the most. And then the rest of the series had really great episodes and highlights, but it was inconsistent, and then the finale was bizarre. I really did not like the way it concluded, or the costume, or the fight in the alley. I don't know, a lot of stuff that felt really anticlimactic and weird.
I want to pick a Randall up on that. I want to explore that more because he agrees with me. So I want to hear vindication here. So was it just the suit, or was it the fact that he's fighting the Kingpin now, and maybe that's something they should have held back for later seasons, or is it something that you can't describe?
Well, the setup of the show is interesting because it gets a little bit more. It's, I guess you'd say, philosophical, but it's also the drama is coming from the conflict of the characters, which isn't resolved always by punching each other, and then the finale is just like a little scrap. You know, it's like, oh yeah, then they just hit each other and it's over, and it's like, well, I don't know about that. Like, it didn't really feel consistent with the rest of the show. Basically, it's like almost as if you were trying to make the superhero version of The Wire, and then the last episode they just kind of took an idea from a cartoon episode and put it in there as if that was totally acceptable, and you were like,
But what's interesting about that brawl they have is that it sets up the entire rest of Daredevil's dynamic, and that it's like, okay, so he got around the law and the law failed, but Daredevil is here and Daredevil can make it right.
No, I didn't hate that idea. It was just that they've been doing that throughout the show. Like, that's the idea, is that his reach as Daredevil goes further than it does as Matt Murdock, and I like that. But
right.
The way it ends is like he shows up in a funny outfit, which is assembled by a guy with some mental issues and a blind dude, and it kind of looks like it, because you're like, ooh, Jesus Christ, you clearly can't see yourself in the mirror right now. You're not intimidating at all. And so he has his Halloween costume on, and they just fight, and it's not really. It turns into like total cliches in a way that I wasn't quite prepared for. I don't know. It was like the show was pretty creative about how it dealt with costumes and, this whole vigilante thing, and then the ending just kind of didn't feel right to me.
It actually ends just like the movie, because it ends, with the characters holding a newspaper. Masked vigilante naps the Kingpin of crime.
Yeah, it was weird because you're like, well, Kingpin has all these resources and stuff, and he was going to like get out of the country. Is he not able to avoid jail, or like what's going on here? Like they just kind of, like I said, it just all of a sudden it was cartoon rules, and it was like, oh, okay, superhero beats bad guy, everything's fine. And I was like, okay, I don't know, that's not where I thought you were going. For a show that killed off a main character from the series to make a point, it didn't feel like it followed through on that.
That's interesting. I'm just wondering that when the hell's it coming out on DVD? It seems like we've heard nothing.
DVD? What year is it, Phil?
Okay. I only say DVD because I feel like if I say Blu-ray, then I'm pandering to people who are like, ooh, get you, Blu-rays, ooh. Some of us still, I'm talking for the street here, Randall. So it probably won't be out till literally like a week before the new season. That's
right.
probably
It's probably a couple weeks before the new season premieres.
Like the Game of Thrones thing. That's the way they. Yeah, no, great. So, now here's another one. This one, I'm really interested about this one because I really, really enjoyed the Marvel short films that they were putting on the Blu-ray, and I thought that they were really building up a nice trajectory there, because they had Item 47, which was just a really, really cool idea, and a much better plot than anything that was ever done on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. Just the idea of bank robbers getting hold of a Chitauri super weapon and just using that to rob banks. I just loved that idea. So that was a fun one. And then you had, after that, what was the one after that? Oh, it was Agent Carter, of course it was, and that was obviously really, really fun. And then you had Hail to the King, the Further Adventures of Trevor Slattery, which is great. So they were on this track of just making these really, really cool films, and then they've stopped. They've just put the brakes on completely, and it just feels like I don't know if they're ever coming back. So the question is, should they come back? Do you think they're coming back? And what kind of short films could they even do? Spencer?
Should they come back? I don't know. I feel like they have their hands in so many other things that, with all of the different TV shows and the fact that they're about to start releasing 3 movies a year instead of 2 movies a year, that I don't think that they need them. So they have storytelling opportunities throughout all types of mediums that the short films aren't necessary anymore. Like they were fun for the fans, and the reason they stopped doing them is because physical media is dying. Like nobody except for me and Phil buy DVDs of stuff or Blu-rays of stuff anymore. So, and as we've seen with the most recent releases of Marvel Blu-rays, like Winter Soldier is probably the most sparse Blu-ray release they've ever had, and then Guardians was better, but Avengers, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot on it that we don't already know or have seen, since we've been following Marvel since the fucking first Iron Man movie. So, will they come back? Probably not. Do we need them to come back? Probably not either.
Clearly we don't have any ideas for any short films they should do either.
Wow, I couldn't be further across the spectrum on this. I want so many short films from Marvel because there's so many things that they need to explain between movies that I don't, because I don't understand what's going on between, like, I'll tell you one specifically. Between Thor: The Dark World, when Thor comes down to Earth to live with Jane Foster, and then when he at the end of Age of Ultron, he just fucks off back to Asgard without acknowledging his relationship with Jane at all. I'm like, was it really that bad? I need the deets, man. I need to know what's going on over here. So I think you could start with like Thor, like grocery shopping, and he's got to be patient with a bunch of shitty humans. And he's like a little bit of a callback to the original Thor movie. And then he gets home and he forgot to get cat food, and she's come back from a long day of doing whatever mystery shit she does all the time that requires her not to be in the movies. And then he's like yelling about resisting killing 7 people just to bring food home. Sorry, foodstuffs for thine cat. And she's had a long day and they're arguing. I just need the domestic life of Thor and Jane Foster. I really want to know what's going on there, because we got nothing. Even in like Avengers, they gave us a little bit of Iron Man. You see Tony and Pepper hanging out, doing their thing. Thor and Jane can't be doing well.
I fucking love that idea. I'm completely serious. I fucking love that idea.
Yeah, I'd be down for that too. The problem is, when is Chris Hemsworth going to agree to do a short movie about Thor going to the grocery store?
He'll do it. It's Portman we need to worry about.
He just did the Vacation remake. He'll be in this.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Right, you're right.
That's true. Well, that's inspiring me, Randall. I mean, I was thinking of the most interesting thing. I remember that when I saw Captain America: The Winter Soldier, the most intriguing thing that I found on his list of things he wants to do is he'd put on there Rocky / Rocky 2 ? I was so intrigued by that, and I thought, okay, so that's fair comment, and that's a nice little dig, because not everybody likes Rocky 2. Personally, I do, very much so, but I want that short film. I want him watching Rocky 2 and making up his damn mind. Was it worth a watch or not?
It's like a Captain America just reviewing movies with the Falcon.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my god, totally. Them doing Siskel and Ebert together, that's totally what we need.
It's like that, but it's also a little bit of Hot Fuzz, where it's turning into kind of it's getting a little romantic, but just a little.
That's right. He pulls out the whole Rocky box set. Which one would I enjoy? No, which one are we going to watch first?
And somebody did Steve wrong by not recommending Rocky 4, which I think he would be all over.
Yes!
That would be his movie.
Totally. Oh god, I love that. That's fantastic. I'll totally go for that. Because I was going to say beforehand, I was going to agree with Spencer that I actually couldn't think of any ideas for, like, new characters or new situations for the short films, like, because I said yonks ago that it would be great to bring the Punisher back in a short film, but that's not going to happen now. And any of the other characters, like, you could do a Cloak and Dagger short film, but I just feel like that's going to piss people off. It's just like, oh, they're not good enough for a show. You're just going to piss them away in a short film, so you don't want to anger people either. So yeah, and the fact is that, if you're going to do the short films, I don't want them as just some incentive to buy the Blu-ray. I want them on the big screen. It's all Disney, so why aren't you doing... This is still my biggest point of frustration. Why aren't you doing what Disney does with their animated films and with the Pixar films? Give us a full evening of entertainment. Give us a movie and a short movie. You can afford to do it at this point. You're fucking Marvel. You can write your own ticket. Why can't we have... sorry. That sounds so selfish, doesn't it? Why can't we have more? I don't mean it like that. obviously. But it just would be cool. You know, I'm all for extending the cinematic experience and giving us more bang for our buck. That's all it is. But yeah, I feel like unless something amazing happens, and I'd love Randall to be in charge of the short films division, but until that happens, I don't think they're coming back. And it is a shame. It really is. But they're too stretched out.
Kevin Feige, I know you're listening. Listen to Phil.
Well, the question is, I mean, which division was even in charge of that? I mean, because they've split now. Was it Marvel Studios specifically that was doing that, or was it something that Marvel Entertainment really wanted to do? Because it was, you know, like Agent Carter was basically a proof of concept for a TV show, and Item 47 was proof of concept for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I even wondered who was even in charge of the short films.
I think it was just a general Marvel Entertainment thing, because what's his name, Lou D'Esposito, who was he's head of Marvel Entertainment, I think, or vice president of Marvel. I don't know. He has something to do with Marvel, but he directed a number of those himself. So I feel like it wasn't specifically like Studios was like, yeah, put your little video on our DVD if you want, but I don't think they necessarily had big hands in them, especially because they were shot so quickly and with so little money.
Yeah. Oh well, moving on, and my energy's sagging with this next question, because I just gotta be honest with you guys, I'm fucking tired of X-Men. I'm really fucking tired of it all. I just don't see, as a series, I'm just absolutely gonna stick to my guns on X-Men Apocalypse, and I'm just gonna say that we're gonna see something here that feels very, very repetitive and old hat, because it's Bryan Singer making his fourth X-Men movie. First of all, that never happens. You never get a director doing the fourth one. That's just crazy. But he's done enough scenes with Magneto that I know he's got nothing left to say. I know it.
Right.
I've got clairvoyancy here. I'm going to be arrogant about that. I know, at this part, I know he has done enough with Mystique that he has nothing left to say about Mystique visually. But here she is. And we're going to have Apocalypse. And I'm going to keep an open mind about that because it's a new character. And if anything new and fresh is going to come from the movie, it's going to come from that, I'm hoping. But, you know, we've got young Scott, whoop-de-doo, young Jean, whoop-de-doo, young Nightcrawler. Well, that just confuses everybody, you know, from a timeline perspective. Yes, I know it's been wiped. So, I don't know. And the question I want to ask anyway isn't about Apocalypse, about what happens to X-Men specifically, never mind the spin-offs, but what happens after X-Men Apocalypse? Spencer?
I think Fox is they're gonna have to pivot, because if Deadpool is a hit, then they're gonna be more willing to try different things. And we know they're already developing other sort of spin-offs. X-Force has been in development for years. They're developing a New Mutants movie. Who knows what else is, other sort of films are in the pipeline there. But I think that Apocalypse seems like the right time for Singer to bow out, because the world's always in danger in these movies, but once you bring in the most iconic villain from X-Men comic books that isn't Magneto, where do you go after that? So that's kind of the perfect time for him to pass the torch on, but I don't think it's going to be a singular passing the torch to the next director of X-Men. I think they're going to splinter off the franchise into multiple films. They're going to see the success of how Marvel and Warner Brothers are taking these things, and they're going to say, well, why aren't we doing a different sort of X-Men movie every year? And then these movies are going to be centrally driven by their filmmakers, or a passion for the material by the stars. So I think what you're going to see is Apocalypse will come out, and then Wolverine will come out, and then after that it's going to be Wolverine 3 will probably be the start of like this very filmmaker driven change, where it's smaller scale movies but more of them, and they're all with someone at the helm who has a big passion for what they're doing.
Fox has already started doing that. Look at Fantastic Four.
Did you see it, Randall?
No.
Oh, see, I had a feeling. There. Well, what about X-Men? I mean, I know you enjoyed Days of Future Past. I mean,
I really liked it, and I've never been more offended on the show by things you've said.
Why?
than your tirade against the X-Men, because I think like they're in a position to make the coolest X-Men movie at this point. Because I thought Days of Future Past was awesome, and I can't wait for Apocalypse. And I think like there's little things you can see in all the preview images and stuff that, like you were talking about, like not being able to go anywhere with Magneto. But Magneto in this movie is selling his soul to the devil. He's working with Apocalypse, as it looks like he's one of his 4 horsemen. And I'm very eager to see, you know, Magneto's a sort of libertarian, individualist type guy. And if he's going to give himself up to some bigger force to, like, do whatever the hell Apocalypse wants to do, make pyramids or whatever his plot is, then I'm curious to see how that affects all the characters and what they're going to do. So I think it's in the opposite position. I think this could be really cool and fresh and new.
I hope it is. I really hope. I mean, the very first thing I ever heard about the movie was that it really was going to go... The theme of it was about the origins of mutation. How did it actually start? Where has it come from? You know, that's a really intriguing idea to me, and I'm all for that. And you know, Jamie's convinced it's about AIDS because it's set in the 80s. He won't back down from that perspective. Yeah, and
Classic Jamie.
I know. And
Oh boy.
Who the heck knows, right? I hope I'm wrong. I'm just literally I would be so much more enthused for it if it just wasn't Brian directing it. I know that seems like heresy to say, but I just feel like, you know, there's only so much any director, even one as supremely talented as he, can say about one set of characters, one story, you know? That's the only perspective I have on it.
For where can they possibly go? Like, forget about like restrictions, because now you can make any movie you want. And if this movie does really well, they can just use all the CGI in the world to make anything. Like Guardians of the Galaxy is a space movie. Are X-Men going to go to space after this? Like, what are they going to do?
Well, they have to.
They have to go to space.
There are so many good X-Men stories that take place in space, and after the success of Guardians, it's like, why don't you take them into space?
Yeah.
It's true.
There's your
And
answer,
plus,
Phil.
Fox owns like every Marvel alien race, so they need to use them.
That is fucking frustrating as all hell, but I suppose as long as we get them in any kind of context, yeah, that would work. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was cool seeing like Ronan in any live action form. I never expected to see that character show up, and even though he wasn't fighting the Fantastic Four, it was still pretty awesome.
Thank God he wasn't fighting the Fantastic Four. Okay, so I'm going to completely contradict myself now, I think, because I'm talking about how I'm not particularly enthused for X-Men, but at the same time I'm like, man, I want to see X-Force. I want to see that movie. But what the hell is taking them so long? We heard about this years ago. Or at least it seems that way to me. Spencer, what's taking them so long on this?
I'm going to venture a guess that what's taking so long is the script is written by Jeff Wadlow, who was the writer-director of Kick-Ass 2, and after they got the script, they realized, oh, he's a really shitty writer, and this script blows. Don't tell anyone that we paid him for this. And then they put it in a drawer, and they don't want to talk about it.
Right, moving on to the next topic then. Jeez, that's depressing. So, right, well, is it going to get made? Are they just going to have another stab at it?
I think it will, but it's going to depend on the success of Deadpool. If Deadpool works, then they'll do a Deadpool 2. And then if that works, Deadpool's going to be the Iron Man of your X-Force. Because if when New Mutants comes out, then you can fold New Mutants into X-Force and bring Cable in, and Cable is like your Hulk to complete the Avengers comparison.
It's hard to even think of a human being that's qualified to play Cable. I can't think of anyone that fits the bill. I don't know if Randall can help me out on that.
I think it has to be all CG. Not possible.
I think it would work to see Dwayne Johnson as it, but since he's already in the Shazam movie, it's probably not going to happen.
No, it's definitely not. Well, we'll have to pick somebody and pump them up with horse steroids. I'm just trying to think of somebody. I mean, that we could put.
The consensus that I've seen is always Scott Lang. Scott Lang. What the fuck? What is his name? Stephen Lang from.
Right. From Avatar. Yes.
From Avatar.
Well, see, it's that Wizard casting, Wizard magazine casting mentality.
Yeah.
He's got white hair and muscles. It's done deal!
And here's a picture of him with a gun!
Yeah, exactly.
So, now we'll move on to some DC stuff. We're finally getting away from Marvel, folks, so don't worry about it. So we've got some question here, some that Spencer wanted to ask and some that I wanted to ask. So, of course, in the interests of being a gentleman, I should have already done this, so I do apologise, Spencer. But I'll let you ask your questions first, if you'd like, say, because you picked two really good ones.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, which you want to start with?
I guess we'll start with the movie that we'll probably see before the other question, which is so they're definitely doing a solo Batman movie with Affleck. He's co-writing the script with Jeff Johns now. They say he's probably going to direct it. Not quite clear when it's going to happen, but they've already delayed production on his next movie 2 or 3 times already. So it wouldn't surprise me if that got canceled in favor of this Batman movie. So, who's the villain of this new Batman movie?
I would be really pleased if it was a group of villains instead of just one.
Right.
They're not even like in conflict with each other. Like they're a team, and it's like Now You See Me, or something. Like they're all in it together. But this way, it's kind of cool too because you don't have to. You can have one key villain that everybody can recognize. And then you can just do a bunch of bullshit ones too, like Condiment King and Kite Man. And it's so crazy.
Crazy Quilt. I agree with you.
They got a blank check here.
Right. I feel like you need to embrace the sort of like the thing that people really like. Besides the Dark Knight movies, the thing that really sticks in people's mind about Batman in current popular culture is the Arkham games. And people like those because you are forced to run the gauntlet of every possible Batman villain that you can fight in those games. And it would be, of course, really hard to include 7 or 8 different villains and make it serviceable in the form of screen time for everyone, all those sorts of things, and then making sure that you have a coherent story where it makes sense for him to fight everyone. But they did it in the original Nightfall storyline where Bane first appeared, which was he goes to Arkham and he lets everyone out, and he forces Batman to fight and capture all the villains again. And then when Batman was at his weakest is when Bane breaks in and breaks his back. So I think you're right. I feel like you need to have more, like, throw away your traditional sense of one movie, one villain, and try something new, try something different.
I was going to say, it also worked in the 1966 Batman movie.
Right!
Titled Batman movie, where a group of villains fights Batman.
Yeah, but if they didn't do that, I feel like they are really setting up for a Under the Red Hood adaptation, because they've already planted the seeds for the beginning of that story to have been told, because Robin is dead and his suit is on display in the Batcave, and we already have a Joker in Jared Leto, and rumors are circulating about whether he'll appear in Dawn of Justice or if he's just going to make his debut in Suicide Squad. But I think if you really want to put your solo Batman movie out there and say, this is the new Batman, even if people are going to throw a hissy fit if you do another Batman v Joker because everyone likes Heath Ledger's Joker in Dark Knight, tell the different story, tell the Under the Red Hood, tell the story where the Joker is the one being chased and not the one chasing.
I just can't wait to see Hush and Black Mask keep falling off a submarine, and then and then they keep climbing back up again, and then falling off again. It was always my favourite part of that movie, actually.
Everybody wants that.
It's true. It's true.
And then Batman uses the shark repellent on Great White.
How did I know he'd have a Canada? You know, it's true. Because it's like, I was thinking in my head that, I was agreeing with you guys to keep it street level and do any of the classic villains you want to do that. And, back when I first read Batman Earth 1, Volume 1, I thought, well, that might be an interesting idea, because in that one, the Penguin is the villain, and they class him as this utterly repellent. He's the mayor of Gotham, actually, in that one. And he either kills children or eats children. I'm not exactly sure what happens in that, but it's fucking disgusting. Yeah, it's awful. And in the end, you don't see nothing yet. At the end, it's Alfred who takes him out with a shotgun. Fucking kills him. It's just
kills the Penguin?
Yeah, he does. He's gone in Earth 1. But it's, it's Ultiverse, so it doesn't matter.
R.I.P. Penguin.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, it's crazy. And by the way, don't you read that, because Volume 1's really good, Volume 2 blows. If you haven't read it yet, Volume 2's fucking... it's the Riddler, but they turn the Riddler into a really weak Dennis Hopper from Speed, and it just blows. It's awful. They literally have the elevator scene from that movie in this book, and I'm getting sidetracked anyway.
Does he shoot Robin in the leg?
No, he doesn't shoot Robin in the leg, no. No, but I like the idea, and I specifically think it's not the best game, but taking inspiration from the games, the plot in Arkham Origins is a really good basis for a movie, actually, because, that's you have this conspiracy where it's basically Batman Year 2, and it's a year where, in this telling of the story, the cops and Gordon still don't know who Batman is. He's still a vigilante they're trying to chase down. And Batman, it's his second year in the job. He knows what he's doing, and he's got the grasp of it. And he's like, it's only a matter of time before I pick off every criminal on my hit list. But every criminal on his hit list are these guys like Black Mask, who, are only at a certain tier. And it's what he's about to face is so beyond what he could possibly imagine that he's going to need to stick at it. And of course, by the end, this whole conspiracy unravels, and it turns out it's, the main villain is the Joker, and it's his first, battle with the Joker. And that's a good idea, because I just feel like there's absolutely no way, no matter how Suicide Squad is received, there's just no way Joker's not going to weasel his way into this story. What just happened with the new Batman game? The fucker's dead, and he's in every scene. It's bullshit. So it's going to be Joker heavy. That's a studio note. You just know it is, but that would be a good compromise. And also, it's like, I remember one of my favourite characters from the animated series was always Rupert Thorne. And I was always amazed that Rupert Thorne's never found his way into a film. Ever. So it'd be nice to see someone like him, too. Yes, a mortal man, but you can make mortal men despicable.
There also just definitely needs to be a character that can stand toe-to-toe with Batman physically in a fight. Because, honestly...
On a submarine.
Bane is the only one in the movies that has gone against Batman in a fight and really won.
Don't get Randall started on that. But
We're
even
not
then,
talking about this.
it was only for like 10 minutes, because at the end of the movie, they just fucking shoot him with a gun, and they're like, alright, it's over.
Yeah,
this was an ambush. You didn't say we were talking about the Dark.
I didn't know we were talking about the Dark Knight. Oh gosh.
I'm out of here. No dice.
I know. Oh, stay! We're having so much fun. Okay, so Spencer, what was the other question?
Oh, the other question is
poor soups, poor forgotten soups. I want less soups in this movie that's called Batman. But just for parenthesis here, I don't fucking believe that story for a second. I just feel like it's nerd baiting. I really do.
Right. The question is, what do we expect from a proper sequel to Man of Steel? And when will we see it?
It's funny you asked this question, because me and Randall and Jamie did a very in-depth podcast about this very subject. It's just that the way that we were pitching it is that, it should take place before Batman v Superman, and that's when I thought that Batman v Superman was not going to be a direct sequel to Man of Steel, and it feels, at least the way that they're selling it, that's not the case. So that's good. But I just feel like, and I'm just still, oh god, I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't think it's going to exist, right? Like, Man of Steel 2 just doesn't have the push behind it. Like, they're doing Batman vs Superman as an unofficial sequel, even if they're denying that it's a sequel. It was their only way to shoehorn in the entire DC universe through this one tiny opening that they found, which was like, oh, people kind of like Man of Steel. We can use this. Like, it's our chance. Let's do it. And now they're forcing everybody else into it. I think Superman is immediately going to get drowned out.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's a supreme bummer, because, like, Cavill fits the role. Like, he just looks like fucking a drawing of Superman. And regardless of how you really feel about Dawn of Justice, like, those images in the trailer of him with the rocket ship, or above the people that are in the flooded house that are looking up at him at the sky, it's like, man, he looks like Superman. I want to see him saving people. I want to, see him punching the shit out of a robot or a monster or something. But I feel like you're right. We're not going to get to see a proper Man of Steel sequel. It's just going to end up being Batman and the Justice League as the kind of the center tentpole of this whole universe.
Yeah, I think Superman's going to end up like the Hawkeye or Black Widow of this universe, where they're around and they hint at stories like backstories and stuff, but like, you know, it's not much. Like, we're just given very little.
He'll appear in other people's movies, but he'll never get his own.
Yeah, I suspect that's where this is going.
As long as they don't make him the Aunt May. Literally, they could have so little respect for him that his only function is to give wise and sage advice to the cool and hip characters.
Dude, you're joking, but I swear to Christ, that's what they're gonna do. He will show up, and they'll be like, "We don't know what to do," and he'll just give like a little speech, and then rally. He'll do the Independence Day president speech, and then everybody will go back into battle.
Which doesn't even make any sense. This Superman, you'd ask him, "What do we do?" Don't ask me. People fucking hate me.
Should you kill him?
Yeah. Have you tried snapping his neck? That was number one on my list, and incidentally, my only idea.
There's a scene on the cutting room floor of him taking out a piece of paper from his pocket and looking at it, and then slowly crossing out "snap their neck," and then there's nothing else on the list.
Yeah, exactly. And then he just puts that paper, folds it up, and puts it away. Like, oh,
he burns it with his heat vision.
I've done all I can.
You know, the thing that pisses me off about it the most is that I feel like, given that logic, if we're skipping Man of Steel 2, at this point I'm resigned to the fact that we're never going to get Brainiac on the silver screen. Because it's not going to be in Justice League. They're going straight to Darkseid. You know it and I know it, and we'll talk about that in a bit. We're not getting Brainiac, ever. Ever.
This was not... It's funny because when we did those podcasts back in the day, and I was just defending Man of Steel, I saw the Batman vs. Superman trailer, and I just retroactively hated Man of Steel and everything that's...
Really?
Yeah, I was like, fuck this. Forget it. I'm off. I'm done. I'm out. It really looks like a mess. Like, the next movie looks like a mess. I think they're going to destroy any sort of foundation that they built up. Because it did feel like there was an out. Like, they tried to have it both ways with Man of Steel, where it was like, we're going to do a little bit of the traditional Superman kind of hidden amongst the newer, darker, different ideas that we're going to explore a little bit. But we're going to show him kind of develop into the iconic character that everyone's familiar with. And I think they may just be trampling all over that at this point. I don't think that will ever come to fruition.
Oh, bummer. Alright, well, kind of makes the rest of the questions redundant, because Randall's logic is we ain't going to get any of these other movies that I'm about to talk about, but we'll try and talk about them anyway. I mean, this is going to be a question I'm going to have to ask you guys, because I still haven't seen it, though I have pre-ordered the box set and I'm going to watch it the moment that it comes out. I haven't seen the Flash TV series. Can't wait. Even Mum loves it. I know. I am really, really sorry. Call me a traitor to my generation. But the really interesting question is, you know, we've got this character that's set up a beautiful mythology from what I understand it, and it's got a really, really great take on it, and yet we've got this supposed Flash movie that's going to come in, and I guess have nothing to do with it. At least that seems to be the plan, because the TV universe is completely separate. It's not even a TV universe, because I don't think the Flash has any connection to Gotham, from what I understand. So...
Well, there is a TV DC universe. They're doing, like, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow, and all that stuff. You're missing out. There's a lot going on.
No, I agree. I'm going to start catching up. I promise I am. But the question is, you know, obviously, what do you do with the Flash? We're saying categorically it should be the TV Flash. You've already got 100 stories and you just give him his movie, or are we saying that's actually exciting that we're going to get something different?
Oh, okay. I agree. I wish they would do, like, in the tradition of the beautifully translated from television, Star Trek: The Next Generation franchise. If they could jump from the small screen to the big screen flawlessly, I would hope that they could do something. I mean, I'm being facetious. That's awful.
Yeah, my sarcasm detector's off the charts right now.
Yeah, because I couldn't think of an example where they actually have taken a TV property and made a movie and it was successful. I'm drawing a blank.
You mean like successful in terms of like the story they're telling, or like box office wise?
Both. Like something that not everybody hated.
Well, like Sex and the City movie, that comes to mind.
Oh yeah, there you go, something like that. Yeah, but it's like I wish they could translate it and make it.
How about Beavis and Butthead Do America? That's my pick.
Yeah,
it's a really great movie, you know.
It's well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if they could do that, that'd be awesome. But I think that the movie is going to be weird because they're not only they're not going to want to take any cues from the show. Like they're probably going to want to distance themselves.
Right.
So the movie's probably going to be pretty terrible. Like it's going to be fast guy. I mean, what is he going to do? You know, they're going to probably not do all the cool sci-fi stuff.
He's going to fight Captain Cold. Or you'd be more excited.
Well, you already get that on the show like every other week.
I know.
Quite a lot. Phil, you'd watch the...
No, what I mean by that, I know who the villains are in it.
Sorry, it's not on DVD yet, but when it is...
I'm getting the Blu-ray! I'm making the expensive purchase on this one. But no, I know who the villains are in it, but I just feel like for the exact reason that I just can't see them doing Anti-Flash, because he's so defined now by the show, it seems to me, anyway. That's
the thing, yeah, like, I feel like they're not going to want to touch that stuff, and they're going to try to do their own thing, and it's going to be... They're probably... DC seems to be doing this, like, very serious take on their characters, and this character is not inherently serious. It's fun and crazy and colorful, and
especially with the guy that they've hired to play Barry Allen, Ezra Miller, it's like, you don't hire that guy unless you're doing something strange, because he's not the kind of a character actor that plays like just sort of your straight-laced regular Joe kind of, I'm gonna go to work and then, oh no, I'm always late, oh shucks, which is kind of the Barry Allen sort of character archetype.
Yeah, they've definitely cast kind of like a rock star kind of actor. Yeah, that's like that just doesn't. I have no idea what they're gonna do with this, but I feel like because they're going to try to do something so different, that I'm not against this, but I don't know that it's going to be really that great. Like, recently we've seen them give directors sort of like free reign over material, and it doesn't always work out. Not saying that they should do like cookie cutter stuff either, but finding people that understand how to translate this stuff into movies that people want to see is important, right. Even if they're not trying to recreate the show. I'm worried they're going to go so far off in another direction. We're all going to, watch it and be like, "What happened? Where's the? Why are you making this? What are you doing?"
I do worry that the film will negatively impact the show in that they're not going to be able to do things they want to do on the show because it's something they might be doing in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
Which is something that they've already sort of run into with Arrow, where they're like, and both the Flash, where they're like, we want to use these characters, and DC Entertainment says no, you can't. They're using them in the movies. So then they say, oh, okay, and then they have to go find like a Z-list character, and then turn them into like a cool character for the modern audience, which they make it seem really easy because there are some fucking winners, let me tell you, out there. but the one thing that the movie does have working in its favor is that the special effects are going to be fucking top notch. So
yeah,
the effects look fine on the show, but they are certainly television effects, and it would be awesome to see the Flash with movie level effects.
Yeah. What about the costume too? I mean, the costume, it seems to me, is a TV costume, not a movie costume per se. Yeah. So,
but it looks pretty good. Like it's skewing toward the Marvel style of designs, where it's like more of a functional looking kind of combat suit rather than a like now with the new DC movies, they're kind of doing this like latexy deal. Like Batman, they're saying like, oh, he's jacked and his muscles popping out of this fabric uniform, but he's head to toe latex, man. He's rubber man.
I don't think he's wearing rubber. He just seems to be wearing clay.
Exactly. Just mounds of clay. It's all glued to his body. It looks weird. And then there's that weird part where it's like you see I really checked out when they showed Batman wearing pants over his costume.
Yeah.
He's got this jacket and pants on him. First off, that's got to be really hot. And then secondly, and there's no breathability in that mask, and he's got the little goggles on and stuff. I'm like, get out of here. What are you doing?
Yep, it's true. It's true, but we'll see how they tweak it. I'm going to run a scenario past you here, guys. Nightmare scenario. But I just want you to be prepared for it. You know, we call these things out. Maybe because what we say sometimes comes true, I shouldn't even say it. And if this comes true, you can hate me for it, blame me forever. What do you think the possibility is? Just throwing it out here. Warner Brothers could actually kill the show before its prime, before it should end, in order to make way for the film.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. It was a point that I was sort of thinking about but didn't say, because it's like they're only getting into season 2 right now, and it's probably the most popular show on the CW. If it's not, it's like top 3 easy. It's more popular than Arrow, that's for sure. It does way better ratings. But then, it still doesn't do incredible ratings wise. Like, it still gets taken to the fucking cleaners by almost everything else on television by comparison. But I feel like if they, because the Flash movie itself isn't out until 2018, so there's plenty of time for this show to get the axe for any number of reasons.
But I mean, you can see from the potential of the show that you could be looking at a 7-season show, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
But instead, you get a 4-season show because they kill it, you know.
Yeah, that seems believable. Unfortunately.
Thanks a lot, Phil. You're welcome.
Yeah. Although there's all this teasing of like some of the stuff that's very hopeful about the show is that they're teasing other characters that could also exist in the movie. So maybe that's the hope for them not canceling it, because they're foreshadowing Green Lantern a lot on the show, like in a way that's like, I don't know that they would be doing this if it wasn't for a purpose. Like they've already given themselves the out to introduce a Hal Jordan Green Lantern without having to explain his origin, because they kind of already did, you know? And there's like certain things like that where I'm like, well, if he can just show up on that show, because that's what they're paving for that character, then maybe the looming, Warner Brothers movies aren't a major threat to the TV versions of these characters.
I'm being very careful how much I talk about Green Lantern tonight. I know that's a sensitive subject. I'm being very, very sensitive here. Okay, right, now here's an interesting question, and I know Randall's going to have a really good, meaty, cynical answer for this one, because I'm befuddled, guys. You're going to have to help me out here. I do not understand this. We're going to have, apparently, a Justice League Part 1 and a Justice League Part 2, and they are a year and a half apart, in between which we'll get some other movies. Now, I'm going to assume, sweet, naive, innocent Phil, that they have a plan here, that they have a story. They've already figured out why there's a Part 1 and there's a Part 2, and that they're structured that way with movies in between. Or is it just the fact that they're just like, no, we're going to make something epic. It's basically the Bible, and you're going to like it. And it's going to be a year and a half apart, and you're going to sit there, and you're going to like it. It's going to be amazing, because your kids are going to like I'm imagining some kind of, like what they did on Superman the Animated Series, like Part 1's going to end with, the forces of Apocalypse invading Earth, or something like that. Complete cliffhanger. And then a year and a half later, we'll, take the fight back to their planet, or something like that. I know it's Darkseid. It's got to be. So, why is it a year and a half apart? Is it because they have a plan in place and a story, or is it just something utterly cynical and they don't have any clue why it is? It just is. Randall?
Yeah, I think it is that. I think that they're separating it, because in case they don't make the first one, they gotta line it all up, and then if they can't make the first one, then it's like, fuck it, just forget it. we didn't do too much work on it. We could just let it go. And then also, if that's not the case, then they have to make sure that they get some reading on the first movie before they do much work on the second half, or the second one, or is it Part 1 and Part 2?
That's what it's
calling them that, yeah. But who knows if it's actually? I don't think they're actually developing them as a singular story that they're then going to split into two.
Oh, okay. Well, whichever. I think they might need to gauge audience interest or Comic-Con interest or whatever, just to see how many characters they can shove in the second half to set up more movies. Because that seems to be their MO. Is like, oh, okay, well, this Batman, Superman, we set up like 20 extra characters, so now let's put 50 in here to make sure we can make more movies in the future. I don't think any of it's for story purposes.
Spencer?
It's absolutely because what you do in this modern era of blockbuster filmmaking is you plant flags years away before you even know what you're making. And with this one, they planted all of the flags with all of the DC movies by saying they're coming out on these dates and these are the movies. And excuse me, I don't think it's because they have an idea of, well, they don't have. I don't think they have quite the blueprint. Like I'm sure they have vague ideas of, well, this is the villain of the Justice League movie, and then this is the villain of Justice League 2. But I don't think it's going to be sort of a Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, or your Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, where it doesn't seem like it's being designed as, like I was saying, two parts of one story. It's going to end up being one part that sort of leads into a second part that, when smashed together, you're going to be like, what? The only thing that's connecting these is they're both called Justice League. And the things that are working against this plan is that between the two Justice League movies, you're going to get both Avengers Infinity War movies, and you're going to get two more DC movies, and like solo movies in between. That is, if everything that's on the calendar came out right now, you know, as it's put on the calendar right now, you would see The Flash, Aquaman, two Avengers Infinity War movies, and two Avatar movies between the Justice League movies. So I feel like, and they're starting pre-production on Justice League next year. They're starting like, you know, March or so, pre-production on Justice League, and then so they're definitely making a Part 1. But I feel like by the time they're done filming that, they're just going to call it Justice League. It's not going to be Part 1 anymore. But when they get to Part 2 and maybe it works, people want to see it, they'll call it Part 2, but not in the sort of way of this is a sequel to that other movie you saw a year and a half ago.
I don't know, man. I sort of imagine it was just that you've opened my eyes to something that didn't occur to me, because it is called Part 1 and Part 2. I thought it was one big story, but it's possible I'm wrong. Maybe they are just two different movies. I don't see why or how or anything like that. Right, well, that's that. Well, here's the final question. This is the one that we can gauge some accuracy on. And Randall has kind of half answered it already based on what he perceives the reaction to Batman v Superman is going to be. But right now, at least the plan is that once Zack Snyder has done that movie, that he is going to direct these two Justice League movies. Is he? Or is he going to be out after this Batman v Superman movie? Randall?
No, I think he's all in. I don't... Oh, man, I don't want this to sound like shit talking about Zack Snyder, but look at his run of movies prior to this, you know, WB situation that he's got going on that started with Man of Steel. Like, I think this is a good place for him to be. You know, like Sucker Punch and all this stuff. Like, I'm not sure that really where that was going to go for him. And his strength has always been adaptations, you know, like that's how he started his career, like 300 and stuff. That's how he made his mark. So I don't see why he would jump ship after Batman vs. Superman.
Spencer?
I feel like these stories we've seen this week where Snyder is like throwing shade at Ant-Man is kind of all the proof you need that he is pot committed to Warner Brothers and the DC stuff, because not only every movie he's made except for the Dawn of the Dead remake has been a Warner Brothers movie, so he was already kind of their golden boy to begin with. And but Randall's right, he's had more success with his adaptation movies, except for the Owl movie, which I'm like 90% certain was an adaptation, but no one knew that. So it's, you know, it's not like 300 or Watchmen or Man of Steel.
It was an adaptation of the idea of owls.
But I feel like this is his wheelhouse, like making these gigantic blockbuster movies with these incredible and huge special effects set pieces. Like, that's kind of the reason it seems like he started making movies, because even though the Dawn of the Dead remake is pretty good and like has really cool character moments, clearly the scenes he likes the most are the ones where the shit hits the fan. So when you're making a Justice League movie, you want a guy that's going to be able to properly show you the shit hitting the fan with all of these heroes that you kind of love. So I think he's in. I think he's going to stay, unless some horrible thing happens and they say, no thanks, you're out.
This is a tricky one, this. For the sake of contrary viewpoint, I'll say no, he's not going to stay. I have nothing to back that up with whatsoever, but it's so far ahead that we just can't see the future. I just don't know. I mean, what one or two things is going to happen, right? I mean, let's say the Batman v Superman's a huge hit. Then does he get high on himself and he's like, but I've got other stories to tell. I'm the visionary director of 300. At least that's what the trailers say I am, you know. So I've got other stories to tell. I do have other sucker punches to make, you know. Well, maybe that's going to happen and he's going to have to part ways. You know, relationships with studios break down eventually. It's really hard to think of many that stay together for huge periods of time. They exist, but I don't know. And also, it's, you know, don't we get a say as an audience? If we're bored of him, maybe they'll read our apathy and we're like, well, we can't take that kind of chance with Justice League. We need to bring in someone here who's exciting, you know. And by the way, I know you're all thinking it, but I am not saying bring in George Miller. We tried it, we read it, and it wasn't going to work. But, you know, I'd just rather... And again, it's just the thing that, you know, when he'll have done Man of Steel, and then he'll have done Batman v Superman, and the next DC movie, that'll be his third attempt, and I really don't think even a visionary director like that is going to have much to say visually at that point with these characters. He's going to be tapped out, you know. Even if he gets a shot at new characters, like this will be the first time that Zack Snyder does the Green Lantern Corps or the Flash, and the idea of that from his eye is exciting to me, because I think he makes great looking movies. I don't think any of us will dispute that, but nah, I don't see it. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he's part ways. I think it'll be his choice, and I think he'll just want to move on. And I think it'll happen. I think it'll just be just like Jon Favreau. He'll just like step aside. And I mean, think about it. Would you have wanted? And this is an interesting question. You know, would you have wanted to see Jon Favreau's The Avengers? Think about that. Maybe you would. Maybe you won't. I don't know if you want to tell me.
Well, I feel like if he had gone straight from Iron Man 2 to Avengers, none of us would have ever thought, like, what if Joss Whedon had made the Avengers?
No, sure.
So that never would have occurred to anyone. And I feel like he probably would have done a fine job with it. But at the same time, if Favreau was on it, of course someone else would have been brought on to doctor the script, because they weren't going to go with Zach Penn's script for the movie. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of who that person would have been and establishing that voice, which is what Whedon really did to cement his place as the director. So visually, yeah, like a Favreau Avengers movie probably would have worked, but it's a matter of luckily they have Chris Terrio. So granted, we don't know if that's going to work with the DC movies. It works with Argo. Who knows if it's going to work with superheroes? But as long as Snyder's along for the ride, as long as there's someone else there that's like, hey, let me write this for you, I think we're kind of okay.
And just the last thing for me to say about it is, and I've said it before, I actually said it on the very first episode of Marveling at the Future, so it brings it full circle. But to me, you can have the Marvel movies and you can have the DC movies, and you can have ways in which they are completely separate and yet both completely lovable at the same time. I love the Marvel Studios movies. I love the world that they build, but they are popcorn. You know, they are dense, they're fun, they move as fast as you flip through the pages of a comic book. And all of them put together are not as interesting and debate-worthy as either Man of Steel or The Dark Knight Rises. And I feel like that's where the distinction can be made. The DC movies, they can be mythology. They can be huge. They can go for broke. I don't want five Flash movies. I don't want 5 Green Lantern Corps movies. I want the definitive Flash movie. Hell, I want the definitive Cyborg movie. If you can make it, if you think you can do it, go for it. I certainly want the definitive Wonder Woman movie. We've waited long enough. And I just want movies that have a lot to say, a lot to discuss, that we can do 7-hour podcasts about and debate them, not even be sure whether they are great movies, but just have a passionate debate about it. I feel like that's what DC can do. And it's really hard to say that it's gonna, because all we've really got so far is one movie in this universe here to talk about. But I've no doubt that Batman v Superman, that's going to be a movie that we're going to be able to talk about for hours. I'm very, very confident of that. And in that regard, I'd much rather have that. If it's good or bad, I don't know. But I'd much rather have a movie that I can talk about for a long time than a movie that evaporates as I'm watching it. That's all I ask. At this point, my apathy is so strong that it's not like, I'm not even aiming for good, you know. I'm just aiming for interesting. That's all I want, you know. And that's hopefully what we'll get. So, folks, that's it for a couple of months, at least. I think we covered all the bases here, but by all means, if there is any topic here that you wanted to hear our thoughts on that we didn't cover, let me know in the comments section and we will pick it up at Christmas. Right, folks, thank you so much for your time. Spencer, Randall, a huge joy and a pleasure. Will I be seeing you at Christmas?
I will be here with bells on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christmas bells.
Ho, ho, ho.
Okay, I think we're done here.
All right, folks. You take care. Have a very happy Thanksgiving, I guess. And we will see you in December. All right, folks. I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The bad news is that for weeks, I think, we've been teasing that we were going to have a cinematic happy comfort food segment on the ultimate comfort food movie, Back to the Future. It was in the bag, it was recorded. I recorded it with Hannah, who joined me for that fantastic discussion we had on Aliens. And it's not going to happen, unfortunately. There's been an issue with the actual recording that we did, some kind of interference with the recording tool. It's just made the file unreadable, unfortunately, and I can't salvage it in any form that would be in any way listenable or good enough for that movie and for you, our audience. So that's not going to happen. I'm really, really sorry about that. So I was racking my brain and I was thinking, well, what can I give you? What would you like? What's something I could give you as a going away present for the next couple of months that I think you'd really, really enjoy? Something you've been asking me for, actually. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I'll just give it to him. Especially since I'm really, really proud of this. So, and this is no way a teaser trailer for what may be coming. I've absolutely no idea what the future's going to hold, but for your viewing pleasure, I would like to bring back, in high definition this time, our discussion on 1978's Superman the Movie, my favourite film, as part of the Super Moan series. It's right here. It's me, Justin, Randall, Jamie, and Robert Meyer Burnett for 90 minutes talking about this fantastic movie. I'm really, really proud of this one, actually. The way that it's edited together, I actually think we've done it better than I did back in 2013 when I initially made it. It's a completely redone version. I really, really hope you enjoy it. Here it is. Now, rest assured, folks, we're not going to be arrogant enough to presume that you don't know anything about the production of Superman the movie that you haven't already heard before. I truly believe that that film can now be put on the pedestal with films like Raiders of the Lost Ark as one that's been fully analysed and all of its making of secrets disclosed. That's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about Superman the movie on an emotional gut level and why it is the progenitor and the pinnacle of comic book movies, still to this day. For those of you who don't know, this is my favourite film. And if I know anything about the guys doing this show with me tonight, it's one of their favourites too. And it's got to the point for me where I know every inch of it. I know every shot, every music cue, the name of every actor, practically. I know every line of dialogue, and the way even the smallest, most insignificant lines are delivered by the actors in the film has its own sense of identity and rhythm. It's like a good piece of music, so the lines have to be said in a certain way or not at all. For example, I can't say, Jor-El, be reasonable. I have to say, Jor-El, be reasonable. And of course, you know, the ultimate litmus test then for your favourite film is, if you know it that well, if you can just play it in your mind in your sleep, can you still sit back and enjoy it and love it? And that, to me, proves just how much magic Superman the movie is, because the answer for me is hell yes. But let's start and hear from our illustrious guest tonight. I have to start with you, Mr. Robert Burnett. When did you first see Superman the movie? How much do you love Superman the movie? And how well do you know Superman the movie?
I saw Superman the movie opening weekend at the John Dance Theater that no longer exists in Bellevue, Washington, and I believe I saw it in 70 millimeter. And I loved it. And I did believe that man could fly. However, over the years, I do find its tonal inconsistencies to be somewhat problematic. But I mean, I still love it, and like you, Ned Beatty's banter with Lex Luthor is still rolling around in my head, and I still don't understand why Lex Luthor surrounded himself with Otis and this Tessmacher. I'll never quite understand that, but it certainly was cool. Probably my favorite scene in any superhero movie ever is the scene on the rooftop where Superman arrives for his interview with Lois Lane. And you realize that Superman, he's the Mac Daddy. He knows what he is. He knows how he's affecting her. He's flirtatious when he tells her that her underwear is pink. I mean, as soon as he can, he looks up her shirt or looks down her dress or whatever. I mean, he is the man, and he's not some earnest Boy Scout that is completely detached from the rest of humanity. He is a man and a Superman.
Randall, same question goes to you, sir.
I agree with a lot of Rob's points here, where there's a really intelligent level to the script that I think is overlooked quite often, and even down to the point where there is an explanation as to why Luthor surrounds himself with idiots, which is in his characterization and admitted by Tom Mankiewicz and everyone who worked on it, that he was a character who was deeply flawed and was very self-conscious and surrounded himself by people who were dumber than him and even tried to hide his flaws by, like, concealing his baldness and stuff like that. He was a very self-conscious character, and Superman was definitely a character who was in control and had a sense of identity, but he was mysterious. The audience doesn't get to peek behind the curtain. They just get glimpses of who he is and get to extrapolate, his identity based on that. So it's a more intelligent movie than it gets credit for, and there's a lot of layers to it. But it's very fun and light on the surface, and that's an important part of why it's so entertaining.
So, Justin, go ahead.
I'm like Randall. I was born after the film came out, right after it came out, about a year, I guess. It's just sort of always been there. I've got a picture of me when I was 3, 4 maybe, in a Superman costume, standing up on the couch holding my cape out. Like, it's just kind of always been present in my life. I don't remember when I first watched it. But I have this really, really weird relationship with Superman the movie. Because when I'm not watching it, I'm critical of it. And I'm like, well, the wire work is really obvious, and Chris's look isn't quite, he's got, real prominent cheekbones, and he looks a little gaunt sometimes, and I'm real critical, and I'm like, okay, it's a good movie, but it's not the best movie, and it's not great. And then I turn it on, and I'm like, nope, I buy it. I'm in. And, like, when I'm watching it, everybody did so well in it. Chris Reeve in particular did such a good job walking around in, honestly, a pretty ridiculous outfit that, like, I don't care about all those things anymore. I don't care about the obvious wire work. And for most of the movie, honestly, he takes obvious wire work and makes it look really damn good. But it just, I don't know. The movie has something else that goes beyond. It's more than just the parts. And I'm completely taken away by it. I'm not a huge fan of Margot Kidder's Lois, but God, she works well in that movie. I'm not there's all these things I can be critical of independently, but when I'm watching it, the first 4/5 of it, like I was just watching it with a friend a couple weeks ago, because she's like, I want to watch Superman with you, because like you're the Superman nerd, and I want the commentary from you while we're watching, and it's like it gets to the part basically where Superman confronts Lex towards the end, and here's the plan and everything, and then I just feel like the movie just comes off the rails with like stuff that doesn't make any sense, and the turning back time, but somehow that made the events not happen. He didn't actually stop the events, he just turned back time. So why didn't the missiles why didn't they hit again anyway? Anyway, it just all comes off the rails the last 1/5 of the movie or so. But up until then, and even honestly with all that, I'm like, whatever. But up until then, it's just such a superb film that I don't know, even when I am critical of it, it goes away. I don't know.
Jamie, what do you think? We've talked about this before, sir, but I never get tired of hearing it.
I don't know when I first saw it either. I might have actually seen them in reverse order, but I think for a lot of kids, and Justin, you talked about this with your children, it's like you inherently know them. My nephew knows Batman. I don't know where the hell he found out about Batman. He just knows who Batman is. Yeah. And I guess that was the way with me. You just see it somewhere. And I mean, I rewatched it last night, and I hadn't seen it in probably a year or two, and it's incredible. Everyone who sets out to make a movie, they want to make a good movie, a great movie, the best movie possible, but there's sort of that certain little, I like to think that God himself comes down and like touches upon this movie, like, yes, this movie will be magical. This movie is magic. And this is one of them. And I don't know what it is, and it's certainly something that in this genre has never been achieved ever since. I don't think as great as the Nolan Batman trilogy is, and as much as everyone loved the Avengers and stuff, it's like there's something about this with the sincerity, and it's got the action, it's got the adventure, and it balances all of these different kind of genres, and yet it somehow works. Why does it work so well? I don't know why. I think it's because of the sincerity, maybe, because it's such a damn earnest movie. And you believe it. And the phrase the movie was marketed was, you'll believe a man can fly. And you absolutely do. Like, there's one or two shots that still are in the movie where you can see the wires. One or two shots. But you don't give a shit. You're so wrapped into the story. And Christopher Reeve, I don't know an actor alive who could say, yes, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. And then when Lois responds, I don't believe this, he just says very, very earnestly, very sincerely, very straightly, Lois, I never lie. And you believe him.
Also, Jamie, the first half an hour of that film, from the destruction of Krypton through all of that Smallville stuff, like the stuff in the wheat fields where he's standing looking at his future, and Martha Kent comes out, and the music, and Glenn Ford, and everything, it is so mythic and so American. Yeah. At its very core, that it touches on emotions and feelings all of us have. It's like that moment when Luke is looking at Tatooine's twin suns and the music swells up. It's no wonder they used John Williams to score that movie, because the first half an hour of that film is more emotional and more deeply affecting and more mythic than anything in any superhero film that's come out before or since.
You hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. The idea of the myth and the fantasy, Randall talked about when they were writing it, they were like, it's a fantasy movie. And I think that movie, and Star Wars is another great example of a movie that completely and openly accepts its fantasy elements. You don't need someone to explain to you why a lightsaber works, and you don't need someone to explain to you why Superman flies in Superman the movie. He just does. And the acceptance of that kind of those fantasy elements, I think, makes it all work, because they realize they're telling a myth. They're not telling a gritty, cop in the hood story. They're telling a myth, and they know it, and they tell it at that level. Whereas I think some of the more modern superhero films suffer from not understanding that. They're trying to make it more real and relatable, and they lose the fantasy element. And that movie they weren't ashamed of being fantasy. They weren't trying to pretend they weren't fantasy. They weren't trying to explain every element to you to make it more believable. You believed a man can fly because he believed a man can fly. Like, they didn't need to tell you that, okay, he soaks up the sun's energy and then he somehow metabolizes this, or you just believe.
And tonally, even down to the production design, they follow through with that. Like, all of the technology and stuff in the movie is all magical, even though now technology is catching up with that, and there are shards of glass that hold a ton of information on them. at the time it was really magical, and you're seeing them really, really follow through with this idea. Like, it's a fairy tale. It's not the real world. It needs to be believable, but not real. And that's a big important thing. Like, realism and believability are two different things. And in the movie, it is a world that we recognize, and in the big disaster scene where with the big helicopter scene where Lois is trapped on the building, the police arrive, the fire department arrives, and everyone gathers around because it takes place in a world that we understand has certain, realistic physics and stuff like that, where this person's in mortal danger. But then the fantasy hero shows up and saves the day and kind of breaks reality.
I would go even further, and I would say that not only the first half an hour, it opens on Krypton with this fantastical civilization and with architecture we've never seen before, but then it's immediately grounded with Jonathan and Martha Kent and their pickup truck, and when you see young baby Kal-El pick up that pickup truck, it's the perfect melding of fantasy and reality there, because you have a period truck, you have this kindly old couple right out of a Norman Rockwell painting, and then you have this cute kid lifting up this truck, and then the rest of it becomes naturalistic, and then you get to Metropolis, which is not some matte painting. It's New York City, and they're shooting on the streets of New York, and one of the great jokes of all cinema is when Superman tries to find a phone booth and can't, and there's a phone stand, and then what do you got? You got a pimp. Say, Jim, that's a bad outfit. Whoa,
And see, Robert just proved my point, because he said it exactly as it said in the movie. You can't say it any other way. There's a rhythm to it.
Yeah, and everything about Charlie, just fly. It's that whole thing. Don't look, just fly. I mean, all that stuff.
Something. You ain't saying what it is. Just trust me. Now, just before Justin comes in, actually, a little bit of Superman trivia for you. I bet you'll all know the answer to this. What is the first line of dialogue that Superman, as Superman, in his Superman suit, says in the film? What is his first line? Is it A, easy miss, I've got you, B, excuse me, or C, fuck your asshole?
Easy miss, I've got you.
Nope.
What?
Anyone else want to take a guess? Excuse me. That's his first line. And this is what I think people respond to the most. I'll get back to this soon, but what I always responded to the most, even as a child, was this idea, and this is what you can't do in modern movies. He is the ultimate gentleman. He's really polite to everybody. Even the criminals, pretty much, and I just think that sums it up so well. It's how you figured out.
He gets a cat from a tree. From a tree. Yeah, it's so sweet. He just says, bye, Frisky. It's long now. Just...
See, he just did it too. I love this point. I'm all quoted exactly as I said. Justin,
you can't do it. It's true. You absolutely cannot do it. And just,
I mean, I may be over the point now, but Rob, as he was talking about, you go from the fantasy of Krypton to this very real American city. I had a word in my mind that he actually ended up landing on, which was the Rockwellian thing, the George Rockwell painting. You do land in a recognizable world that we all understand, but it's not just any recognizable world. It's the iconic version of our world. It's the Rockwell America is the America that we all understand. Everyone gets that. This is middle America, and it's perfect. And then New York City even is like, this is what a city looks like. When you think of a city, you think of New York. And so it's like, even the real world locations they chose were those iconic mythological type of things that it wasn't a matte painting, like he said. It was the myth of our own reality, which I think is really interesting.
And in a way, it's almost a period piece. You almost feel that even the film came out in 1978, it really feels like it's taking place in the 50s or something, even though you have a modern helicopter and we've got nuclear weapons and all of that. It takes place in everything that we believe is the best that America has to offer. Lois Lane is a Girl Friday or a Spitfire out of a 40s screwball comedy or an Ernst Lubitsch movie or something. And I think that the whole movie is about the myth of what was great about America on every level. And it's just undeniable. And Superman, after all, is the greatest American immigrant. That's what his character always was about. He's the best that America has to offer, even though he's from outer space. He's the best all of us. Everything that America aspires to be is what Superman is. And it's never been better exemplified than Reeves' portrayal of it in that first Superman movie.
You know, we've all talked about, you know, how we've revisited the film, whether we've watched the whole thing, when we went back to it. Well, in preparation for this, I didn't just watch the film, theatrical cut, mind you, but I also watched all the supplementary stuff again, because I hadn't watched that a while, including those documentaries that were made for the original DVD back in 2000, the ones hosted by Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen, with his beret. Who could forget that?
Produced by Jeff Johns.
That's right. There we go. No, we're not getting segued though. And you know what? I might have actually seen those documentaries more times than the film. Honestly, I was so fascinated by it when I first saw it. But anyway, Mark McClure had a line in those documentaries which reminded me how much things have changed in a decade since those documentaries were made. Think about how far the comic book movie has come since 2000. And he had a line back then, and he said, "Why does Superman remain the benchmark by which all other comic book adaptations are compared?" Now, at the time, I would have said, well, Mark, it might be because there haven't been that many, and most of them were shit. It's a different story now. It's hard to find a comic book movie today that doesn't have an A-list production team and big-name actors behind it, and it isn't based on an extremely well-known property, because now you can afford, hypothetically speaking, to do anything. So in light of that, is Superman the movie still the pinnacle of the genre? I have the answer to that, but I will open up to the floor first of all. Robert?
I think it absolutely is, because what's happened with our culture, our society, and indeed our movies, we sort of live in the post-snark world, and there's an earnestness to Superman the movie that no longer exists. I don't think anyone could even make a movie like that anymore, because in the world where all heroes have been deconstructed, and the mid-'80s Dark Knight Returns and John Byrne's reboot of Superman and The Watchmen and the Frank Miller's Daredevil and all of these things, the earnestness that movie has, the true innocence that movie has, no longer exists. And nor could you make a film like that again, because it would be heavily criticized and nobody would buy into it anymore, because all that our culture is now is postmodern, self-aware snark.
Randall?
Yeah, everything's handled with a little hint of irony now, or a hand waving of the elements that make it interesting. Like in the Avengers movie, they have to explain away Captain America's suit as being ridiculous and all that stuff. And you know, I think it's fair, but it's still obviously like, you know, it's not embracing it so much as it is excusing it. And with this movie, the idea is the character is a beacon of light, and he's an influence. It's not about a false characterization or like a lie. I mean, it's just that he is something that is supposed to. He's the best of it. To echo Rob's point, he's the best of what America has to offer. He's the ideal version of kind of a person, and it's just supposed to act as kind of an influence. You know, kind of like he's a Jesus character in that sense, and it's pretty explicit in the movie too.
Justin.
It knows exactly what it is. It doesn't apologize for it, and it delivers on exactly what you expect it to be. And there was no one behind the scenes going, yeah, we know we're making one of those comic book movies, you know, like they just made a great movie about a god among men. Like that was it. And that was the story they told, and they told it to the best of their ability, and it worked on damn near every level.
Jamie.
Absolutely. Of course. But, you know, we've seen the spectacle, you know, and really it has been done better in the modern as the years have gone by, just because of more techniques that have been invented and visual effects and everything like that. But the reason it does for me, and these gentlemen before me pretty much laid it out perfectly, I will add, it's the little moments. That's what makes me love any movie. It's just the little moments that I've seen it so many times, and I can appreciate the little looks in any film, and it's all over Superman the movie. It's so many places. I mean, when Clark first sees the image of Jor-El, and what does he do? He comes up and he says, "My son." You don't remember me, but I'm your father. And he has this warm little smile. And, things like that. I mean, when Pa Kent dies and he grabs his hand, it shakes, and he goes, oh, no, Martha? That's the measure of any movie, is when I keep thinking about the little moments more than anything else, than the big moments, the huge spectacle moments, because they're wonderful. But I have to care about the people, and it's just the craft. It's just the way the story is told, the little things. And I'm rambling on here, but go ahead, Phil.
Not at all. I was going to mention my favourite moment apropos of that. You'd think, being my favourite movie, and because I love Superman so much, you think I'd pick the reveal or a rescue or saves the day, turns back time, one of the big moments. But no, my favourite moment is at the end of the first flight with Lois. He takes her back to the balcony. She's still trembling, and he just says, we forgot to time ourselves. And she just goes, almost.
Actually, another one I love is, I feel bad for interrupting your momentum, Phil, is when he goes through the years of lessons through his father. And I thought that really the one that nailed it the most when Jor-El says, now this year we're going to examine the human heart. You'll find that it is more fragile than your own.
And what I love about that is that we don't even hear all the lessons. The dialogue overlaps. Like, you have to watch that sequence several times to actually catch all the things that he's saying. And still to this day, I'm geeking out about this, guys, but there must be like tons of stuff that Brando did that we still haven't seen. Tons of alternate takes of Kryptonian schooling that he must have done that we still haven't heard about. That I just want to devour. Not even in the 3-hour television versions you get to hear the rest of it. It's just, oh man.
Well,
but anyway,
this year we're going to study the various concepts of immortality.
Oh, I thought you were going to say trees. Sorry.
No,
anyway,
no. That's next year.
That is next year.
By the way, Phil, I mean, on Superman Returns, I got to see some of that stuff because they went all into it and they got all those Brando takes, and there's a lot of it. All the stuff that they added. People forget, but the I don't know, you call it the director's cut, the restored version. I love that version of Superman the movie.
Yeah.
I think they did a terrific job adding that material, the TV cut, and combining it with the theatrical version. I love all that stuff. Some of the sound effects are a little much, but I think they did a great job when they created that ultimate cut or whatever it's called.
Well, we'll get to the different versions, believe me, but I think we'll save that for a little bit later. Getting on to my reason why I think it is the pinnacle of the genre, no surprise. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The reason Superman the movie is the greatest of them all is not because it's a perfect film. As we've discussed, it isn't. It is tonally inconsistent. The ending does not make sense. I mean, it is interesting if a modern audience who can't accept a small plot hole in a film like Prometheus without ripping it to pieces, I doubt they'd be able to buy the ending of Superman the movie with him turning the world back. I just don't think they would. It's weird what a kind of double standard we have today. But why it works is clarity of story. It is not possible today to make the kind of film that Superman was, and it says a lot, sadly, about how big blockbuster movies are put together, especially comic book movies, because today, comic book movies are mainstream. They're mainstream literature, and they have a very large, very vocal crowd that has a direct line of communication to the studio and the producers, who in turn seemingly are so desperate for the approval of said fans that they will throw them any bone on the internet just to keep them happy. These days, you release the picture of the character in costume before you've even shot a frame of the film. And the fans, in turn, they tell the filmmakers how the character should look, who the villain should be, what storyline from the comics they should use, what storyline they need to set up in this film for the sequel, and it almost feels like comic book movies today are made by committee. But normal people like ourselves on a web forum are on that committee. You don't have comic book movies today that are not tainted by that. Comic book movies today are not self-contained. The filmmakers are always thinking 2 films ahead and setting things up, sometimes needlessly and pointlessly, for sequels. And what inspiration the filmmakers do take from the source material, it's going to be specific issues and storylines from that comic. And again, it's because we, the committee, say it has to be this way. We say Iron Man has to get drunk, even though they haven't swallowed that bait yet, which is interesting. But Superman the movie, when that was made, comic books were still regarded as cheap literature, catering to children. So to make a big, trailblazing film with huge talent and important film stars behind it, that was opening people's eyes to the concept of comic book characters being our modern myths. These are fascinating characters with real problems, and this can be exciting high drama for any audience to be engaged with. When Superman was made, there was no crowd saying to the studio, "You're so fucking stupid, you can't cast that guy. It has to be this way." There was nobody saying, Lex Luthor must not wear wigs. Now, it's amazing. I mean, you'd hear it today. Lex Luthor's going to wear wigs. That is fucking ridiculous. You watch the film, does it really matter that Lex Luthor wears wigs? Does it matter that he's not bald for most of Superman 2? No! Does it not matter that he's not bald at all in Superman 4? No! There are other problems. When Superman the movie was made, it was a self-contained piece of work, and it managed to throw 40 previous years of source material and distill them down to the core elements that make the Superman myth. In the same way that if you're making a film about Moses or King Arthur or a historical figure, you're not going to leave anything unsaid because you can always come back and make a sequel. No, you're telling a complete story. You're telling a legend. And I don't think there's any greater proof of that in the film than the opening shots. Think about how it opens. It might sound silly, but the film opening with the pages of a comic book, or the pages of Action Comics, is no different to me than opening the pages of the Old Testament at the beginning of a Biblia epic, or opening the pages of a fairy tale storybook at the beginning of an animated Disney classic. It's telling the complete story, and as I said before, what's most amazing about that is it happened completely by accident, because this was just supposed to be half of a story to be concluded in Superman 2. Randall?
I think you're mostly dead on with everything. I will disagree. I think there's a little bit of irony here because the movie was not designed to be self-contained, and the reason and one of the things that is a problem with that final act that you're talking about is actually based on that. It stems from that, which is that the studio pressured them to come up with a more final ending. And their idea was to lift the time distortion thing, the spinning the world back moment from the second movie. Not that it's a good idea in either movie. I still think it's a weak idea, but they take it from the second movie and put it at the end of the first movie. And it doesn't explain anything. I think it makes it more convoluted, but or more confusing. But they tried to turn it into a more self-contained movie and not have the open-ended General Zod will return in the sequel ending that they had originally planned. And that ends up in the long run kind of hurting the movie. It's the only real major flaw of the movie is that ending. And the movie's it's not structured traditionally like modern movies are. It doesn't follow the monomyth thing to the letter. It breathes and tells many smaller stories and builds this mythology pretty carefully. But it does do an important thing in the first act. Instead of setting up a major conflict for the third act, it sets up a major conflict for the sequel. And also does a lot of world building at the same time. And we do meet an opposite character from Superman in the first act, which is Zod. But we don't know how that's going to play in exactly until, the second movie rolls around. But they were shooting both these movies at 1 and 2 at the same time, so I would argue that it's very similar to a lot of modern movies in the sense that it's been, like Lord of the Rings or Avengers or something. It was designed to be a bigger epic. But overall, I think that one of the great things, one of the really great things about it that it doesn't get a lot of credit for is just how well it handled so many disparate elements within one script and how the script doesn't try to conform to ideas and so many cliches. It really lets the ideas breathe, and it doesn't tie down so many cool things with just one plot. It lets the movie have several different plots and plays out nicely.
If the internet was around in 1977 when they started production of this movie, They would have absolutely, just had a conniption fit over the casting of a 6'4", skinny redhead soap opera actor named Christopher Reeve, who looked nothing like Superman on the page. And that's something that just never I don't know if they've ever been able to truly sell this idea to people. They say, look, he looked nothing like Superman. Who was the casting director, Lynn Stallmaster, who was one of the best in the business, kept saying, look, meet this kid. He's the guy, I'm telling you. No, he looks nothing like him. The idea that you can make an actor look the part now, it's as old as time itself. Time itself is in this medium, and yet, people wouldn't accept that nowadays. No matter how perfect he was, it would be such this conniption of like, they would never.
How's that go?
They would never hear the end of it ever. And what's fascinating to me is, now Robert, you might be able to have a better perspective on this because you were around at the time. You know what I mean. But apparently, when they actually introduced Christopher Reeve as Superman for the first time, he was dressed up as Clark Kent outside of the Daily Planet, meeting the press, and that's when they first said, "Okay, this guy's playing Superman." And there were no pictures, there was no kind of introduction. You went in blind, and all you knew was that they're making a big Superman movie, and then Marlon Brando is playing his father, and Gene Hackman is playing Lex Luthor. That's all you knew. And then suddenly this nobody who looks like Cary Grant is going to play Superman. You could not do that nowadays. You could not just quietly hire an actor, start shooting, and then just do something like that.
Well, you have to remember that nobody knew what the hell was going on until a movie got into the theater. Nobody paid any attention. There was, as a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say there was no film nerd geek culture. It was there. There were people that were fans, and there was a few conventions, a smattering here and there. But the only time you ever heard about movies being made is when they were coming out. And, you knew that you'd see an ad that, okay, a movie's coming, in a year from now. You might have a vague awareness that somebody was making a movie, but nobody covered movies. The making of movies were not the summer blockbuster. There had been 3 movies that had made a ton of money that people were, well, actually probably 4. There was The Godfather, The Exorcist, Jaws, and Star Wars. And then, of course, Close Encounters, too. But so there was the idea that you would cover movies, that they were even newsworthy, was silly. So I know it's hard to believe now because there's this culture that we're up on whatever was going on, but no one knew anything until a movie was coming out and they started advertising it. So back then, you knew a Superman movie was coming out 2 weeks before it opened because you saw TV commercials. And that was it. And you would go, and there was no cynicism about movies at all. You would go and have a great time, and you either loved it or didn't like it that much, but everybody would go. And when Superman came out, there was no cynicism about it at all. People loved it. Loved it. Just like they loved Star Wars, because nobody had ever seen anything like that. Superman to people was George Reeves jumping out a window.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And Batman was walking up an inverted wall. It was superheroes on the screen were never treated with a serious reverence. This film was the Superman everybody wished that they could see. In their heart of hearts, they knew was out there, but there had never been any treatment of a superhero remotely similar to what was going on in Superman the movie. And it touched people at a level that had never happened before. Superheroes were never even thought of in the kind of terms that Superman the movie allowed them to be seen in.
But I do think there is something to what Jamie's saying in that it's a lot easier, I think, these days. Or actually, maybe it's a lot harder, I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, these days, the character of Superman has had so many different revisions and incarnations, both in the comics and through all the different television versions, that basically everybody has an idea of what Superman should look like in their head. But everybody has a different version. And if, for my money, looking from my perspective, all of the comics before Superman the movie was released, the character's appearance never changed. He had a pretty defined look, which they didn't stray from at all, and it did not look like Christopher Reeve at all. And as Robert says, yeah, George Reeves was a very, very tough act to follow. In fact, our friend Lou Superman is George Reeves to him. It's all a matter of which generation you come from. So if you judge it on that level, it's amazing. First of all, the balls that it took to cast not a star, but also the job that Reeves did. Now, I think one of the motifs, if you will, that will keep coming up as we talk about the different films and then the different shows is how much has this movie influenced all those other versions. And of course, in terms of so many elements, the impact is absolutely enormous. But I don't think it's anywhere more felt than in the Smallville scenes. Now, different television shows and different comics have had their own version of Krypton, which is great. And they've had their own version of Superman meets Lois, or Clark meets Lois, Superman meets Lex Luthor, Superman's first night, etc., etc. And they're different. Like, they're basically the same, but there's different elements to it. But for my money, until the television show even Smallville itself, every single piece, every single retelling of the Superman myth owes everything to this movie. This, basically, for every incarnation, you tell me one where it's different. Smallville has always been this place, the place that's portrayed in this movie, a place stuck in time, a place stuck in the 50s. Tell me I'm wrong. And the question I wanted to ask, actually, about that, being fans of the story as you guys are, is that Glenn Ford, as Pa Kent, does only get 2 scenes, and then he croaks. Now, I wondered what you guys felt about that from the context of Superman being a series. Whether you wish that they had stretched out the Clark growing up in Smallville material, or that they'd left Pa Kent alive for other movies.
Well, they couldn't have kept him alive. In the comics of the time, which these are based on, the Kents die when he's young. So they're already pushing it, keeping Martha alive, which was a big retelling for the movie, and it's kind of there to show that Clark is empathetic and still anchored to the human world, I think.
I think the way that the movie tells it, though, that he's never going to see her again, most likely.
Yeah,
that's the implication.
He's pretty disconnected from it in a weird way. Like, I don't know why he would be, but whatever. But he sends his money. He sends some money over there and everything. And I think she ends up dying by the 4th movie. Or moves or something. But anyway,
whatever, moves.
It's pretty much the same, right?
The continuities. We'll turn our head upside down and talk about the continuity.
He clearly doesn't care. He's like, I'm off to Metropolis. Otherwise, he's a decent guy.
Randall, be reasonable.
I don't think you can like. I don't know. I mean, again, this is the story they're trying to tell. It's the biopic of Superman. That's what it is.
Yeah.
This movie, it's done just like a biopic. There's got to be some event when he's young that haunts him and it's the death of his father, his adoptive father. It's just like, and no matter how powerful he was, he can't stop human nature. He can't stop things that are inevitable. We're all going to die. You can do a lot of things, but you can't stop death. You can't stop a heart attack. And that's what haunts him. Yeah, I mean, that's what he keeps striving for throughout the rest of the movie. And would I like to see the sort of Ma, Pa, Kent equation done as in the Byrne reboot, like on the screen? I would love that, because that's never been done in a movie before.
Well, when Pa Kent dies, Glenn Ford's scenes in that movie, again, are incredibly mythic.
Yeah.
And the scene where young Clark Kent says, every time I get the football, I can score a touchdown every time. And then Glenn Ford's like, I know that you are here for a reason. Those scenes are all you need. I mean, it's Pa Kent offering his sage-like fatherly advice. You could have scenes if Pa Kent lived, you could have these scenes in every movie, and you'd have the same thing, whether it's Uncle Ben saying, with great power comes great responsibility. The function is the father imparting knowledge and wisdom to his son. And that's it. That is the mythic essence of fatherhood from any mythical story. That your father hands down wise pearls of wisdom that you must heed as you move forward into the world.
Justin.
Yeah, you just started to touch on what I was saying. Like, Clark has spent all that time so far with all of his powers. Like, he was just complaining about, I can make a touchdown every time. And if he never was faced with anything real, that's what he was concerned about with his powers, lifting hay bales and making touchdowns. But when someone suddenly died, it became really real to him, and it became, he says the remark about all those powers and I couldn't even save him. And it made it very clear to Clark the things that he couldn't do, but it also forced him to go out and find out the things that he could do. It forced him to go out and say, what can I do in this world that is a lot bigger than touchdowns? And, that had to happen.
So, can I ask then, guys, we are skipping obviously a huge chunk of the movie and we'll get back to it, but is our concern with the ending that basically Superman is retconning all of that, the message of the film, and saying, no, fuck you, Dad, I can save everybody if I want, watch this, and then he turns back time and saves the woman he loves? Is that a problem that you'd have with the film?
They're sending a confusing message there because he's defying his father's lessons to save Lois's life and stuff, which makes sense, but the outcome of it and the ramification would be that he releases General Zod, but in the official continuity where they give the movie over to, what the hell's his name? Who directed the second one?
Richard Lester.
Lester's version just omits all that, so clearly there's no lesson to be learned from the first one, that there are consequences or whatever.
I feel like that was something that was intended to be paid off in the next movie, and I could be completely wrong on that. As you pointed out, it's like
the original version. It was in Donner's version of it. It's that they're no matter what they would have done, there was a version where Superman's oversight releases Zod, which is essentially the version of the devil. So there is definitely a sort of lesson to be taken from that, I guess. But
also like the fact that the thing about he wants to get, and again, this is getting into Superman 2 territory, and I apologize, but I feel like that was
they're connected. They're very
I feel like that was the intention of Superman 2, was the thing about, I told you not to interfere with human history. You have. This is what happens when you do it, and i.e. what's he do? He falls in love. He wants to give it all up, and that's a part of the thing. Is don't interfere. You're gonna regret this, and that's exactly. I feel like that's what they were going for, and
then he takes it further and says, not only that, but actually, I'm gonna give up my responsibilities completely and become mortal. If that's all right with you, Dad. It's just.
Right.
And well, you know what though, you guys, I have to go. I have to say this. Miss Tessmacher makes him save Hackensack, New Jersey. He promises her that he's going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at the end of that film, as much as I probably wouldn't say this about a modern movie, Superman deserves to be able to save Lois Lane. He's earned the right to have her live. And you see his frustration. And look, I thought turning the world back, that whole visual, was just an interesting way to portray the fact that he's flying fast enough that he's going back in time. He's not spinning the world back like a top on its axis. He's going back in time, and he's doing something he knows he probably shouldn't do, but God damn it, he deserves for her to live. We've watched Superman be the good man, and he deserves, because this is a movie about America. And when you are a good person, you will succeed in the end. And I think that it is a romantic thing, and perhaps it's not earned, and we're thinking in terms of a plot. But if you're talking about mythic structure, he's got to save her at the end. Otherwise, the movie fails.
Looking at it strictly as a plot element, it's weird. It's confusing, and it's not like I'm not saying this because it's I'm trying to over scrutinize it. I think everyone is scratching their head at the end of the movie because you're like, okay, so in the original, they set up that he can only stop one nuke. And so when he goes back, does he stop neither? I'm trying to set up three scenarios here. There's one where he doesn't do either of them. There's one where since we can see that there's no earthquake happening, he saves California, which means Hackensack is screwed. Or I forgot the third one. But anyway, one of those happens.
It'll come back.
And I don't understand exactly what we're supposed to take away from the time manipulation part, except for that maybe the East Coast was nuked and we just never hear about it.
Well, I think it's interesting what Robert's saying about that Lois Lane deserves to live, because I was thinking about watching the movie on Saturday night. I was watching it, and I thought, what's this movie really about? We've all got our theories, but honestly, if we really think about it, what is Superman the movie about? What's the plot? The world wants Lois Lane dead. That's what this is about. Let's count the amount of times somebody tries to ice this bitch. First of all, the mugger would have shot her. The mugger would have shot her in the back of the head, if it hadn't been for Clark, if Clark hadn't caught the bullet. You know, number 2, the helicopter crash after that.
Set it down, set it down. Oh my God, we lost stabilizer, rotor control. I can't hold it, I can't.
Number 3, a gas station tries to take her out. All by itself, it tries to swallow her up in a big fireball. Then, after all of that, God says, right, I've got to pull out the big guns. He rolls up his sleeves and the earth swallows her up. And it would have been interesting, I think, if this were a long-running film series, I mean a long-running film series like a James Bond, how they would have approached that in the future. Because, I mean, I fucking...
Phil, I have to be honest, it sounds like a Final Destination movie.
It is, because I love... This is the bit that proves it. The bit in... I can't say it with a straight face. I can't even get this out. The bit in Superman 4 where Lois gets on the train and and the driver has the least convincing heart attack ever. And Lois isn't even surprised. She's just like, oh, help! Help! You know,
yeah, that was the most contrived death, I think, in the series.
Random
heart attack.
I mean, that's why I think her not really being in the plot of 3 was a blessing, because at least it saved all of that stuff from happening. But really, you know, as much as I'd love for Superman to be a long-running film series, you do have to ask yourself some questions about what works in a TV series and what works in a comic isn't going to work necessarily in a film series. How many times is Superman going to be able to rescue Lois Lane without us rolling our eyes? And that's why, again, it's Superman the movie has the power that it does, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the story, it's the myth. He saved her 4 times. Yeah, 4 times, and I think that's enough.
That's a way of putting it.
I think so. I mean, another thing that I'd like to say is that Superman and Lois's first date, that 10-minute, we can argue about points here and there and the tonal inconsistencies, that 10-minute stretch when he arrives on the balcony, the interview, the first flight, landing back, and then one of the most amazing shots I've ever seen in a film period, where Christopher Reeve as Superman flies off the balcony and waves goodbye to her. The camera pans round to the other side of the apartment, and there's a knock on the door, and without a single cut, there he is as Clark. How did they do that? I still don't have any fucking idea. That is just an absolutely crazy shot. But that 10-minute stretch there, all of those elements, is perfect. I notice how other iterations of the Superman myth have had their own take on those other elements. Krypton, Smallville, Superman's first day, Superman's first rescue of Lois as Superman. But, correct me if I'm wrong, nothing else in TV, animation, or the comics have tried to copy this scene, have tried to copy the first date. Now, I've often said I'm not a fan of the kind of romance where 2 characters who've never met before lock eyes and suddenly it's meant to be. I'm not invested in any romantic relationship that hasn't been earned. Amazing Spider-Man, take note. But you can't put love like that to the test and expect it to have any power or resonance. But what you can do is what Superman the movie does. You write one scene of these characters meeting and interacting and spending time together, which is so brilliantly written that you buy it. You buy into it completely, and from that point on, all the heavy lifting's done. You want them, as Robert said, to be together. Even though, if you know your Superman history and your Superman comics, you know it's wrong and Superman cannot be with her, really, if he's supposed to do his job. Jor-El is right. You want them to be together. You want him to defy the cosmic laws of nature and physics and turn the world back. And as I said, it's my favourite moment in the film. He takes her back to the balcony and says, "We forgot to time ourselves." She's his, and we're with them. It's perfect. And like I said, they're not telling the story of two kids falling in love over a fucking trilogy. It's there. It's all there.
Yeah, they're both very charming characters who are really likable, and I think the audience identifies with them as actual people. They have quirks and flaws, and we've seen Clark go through a lot at this point, and we've seen Lois have her vices, and she has little quirks that make her feel like a at least two-dimensional person, where she can, she can't spell and she smokes and she knows she shouldn't, and she knows better, but she's human, and in a way Clark has his own version of that, but we won't see it fully developed until later in the movie. And so we have two people who we're rooting for, who we like, and who finally meet. And it's easy to want to explore this and root for that, because they're just cool characters. I mean, they're fun to watch. They're actually developed in a way without beating us over the head with all those ideas.
And I love also how I'm still today in awe of the Daily Planet scenes. If you watch the detail that's going on in those scenes, you can't catch it all. Today, 1 billion watches later, I can't catch it all. The production design, the way that the camera and the actors never seem to stay still, that there's always physical action going on, that the dialogue's always bouncing off the walls, there's always people going in and out of Perry White's revolving door, or he's shaking up a bottle of beer, or it's exploding, or bumping into copy boys, and there's the precise choreography of 100 extras in the background, always moving to create the feeling of this being the most important newspaper on the planet, or at least in America. And I know we're not here to compare it today to Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, but Singer maybe purposely didn't replicate that in his Daily Planet. It never felt the same. Sam Raimi sure as hell did. But,
oh God, that is so just copy. I mean, look, I like his Spider-Man movies. I particularly love the second one. But yeah, I mean, you rewatch those movies, and he is intentionally or not copying and pasting that to Spider-Man.
Well, let's not kid ourselves.
Down to Jackie Cooper's Perry White. That is basically J. Jonah Jameson. I mean, the cigar.
I want the name of this flying whatchamacallit to go with the Daily Planet like bacon and eggs, franks and beans, debts and taxes, politics and corruption.
And actually, how an example of how you have a great line of dialogue, and it's done even better by the actor. The line, "This could be the most important interview since God talked to Moses." And it's just, I mean, the way Cooper delivered, I mean, it was a great line anyway, and you could tell, okay, Mankiewicz wrote that. There's no way he didn't write that line.
But I'll tell you, you just pointed something out that the J. Jonah Jameson character is a caricature that exists in movie land, whereas I believe that Jackie Cooper was a real guy.
Yeah.
I believe that his Perry White was a real dude that really worked in New York. And I never believed that J. Jonah Jameson was a real dude.
No, they're very exaggerated. Like Raimi makes his movies are real fantasy films. They're really exaggerated, but Jackie Cooper's character has, again, he's fleshed out in a way that we see, I don't want to call it nuance, but we see different modes to his character. Like, he's not just shouting constantly, and he's not a belligerent asshole throughout the entire thing. He's intense and he's a writer, and he's got
doing his job. But he's
got so much, he's high stress, you can see all the pills
absolutely,
on his
and you know what, but he likes Clark. He sees, and he likes Jimmy. He almost has I love the relationship between them when he goes, I wasn't going to say it. Go! Just this little report, like a parent. It just all those little things. I mean, like,
and not to mention my second favorite dialogue exchange, which is he's trying to mentor Clark. He's saying, "I got where I am today with confidence, elbow grease, and something you're sadly lacking, son. Humility? No, you got bags of humility."
Bags of humility.
Now, I think there is, to be completely honest, we go into movies today, especially comic book movies, our goals are set higher. We do expect movies to be about something, and we always expect the character to go on a journey. And the thing that I've always said about, and that's what I always respect movies for. So it is amazing to say Superman the movie is my favourite movie when the character doesn't really go on a journey per se. He goes on a journey of growth, absolutely, from boyhood to adulthood. But, I mean, when he is an adult, when he arrives as Superman, he's not really put to the test. He's there, he's wonderful, everybody loves him, Now, I think
he doesn't have an explicit arc.
No, absolutely. As you were saying, clearly the goal is to set him up as this adored figure in this film so they can tear him down in Superman 2. So maybe my theory about the film being self-contained is out the window. I don't know. But if the film was made today, you would consider that a flaw, and maybe a devastating one. I don't know.
No, I think there are a lot of really great movies that are modern movies that are plotless. That was something that just came up recently with The Master. Where people just can't identify a plot into a movie and they think it's a bad movie, but it's not. I mean, it's just a different type of film. And Tim Burton is a director who does that, and there are a lot of directors who do that where it's a great story and it's not obvious why we should like it just because we can't check off, everything, a laundry list of things that are supposed to be in a movie. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's different. It's not as contained and formulaic as it should be. Or, according to critics, I guess.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really there really isn't. I mean, the only really growth he has is, as you said, when he wants to find out why, I have these weird things I can't, why do I have these abilities and why am I here? But he finds that out very quickly. I mean, again, like, if we're going to compare it to, be like, Man of Steel is going to be, the entire movie is going to be about a guy like, I have these abilities. What do I do with them? Why am I here? Oh, this is what I'm doing with it. Now I have a purpose in life. I mean, he finds that out pretty quick. I mean, not pretty quickly. I mean, an hour into the movie, he meets his real father. Then he finds his purpose. But it's fine. You don't really question it. It's because it's such a great movie. And Reeves sells the hell out of it.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, when he arrives to Metropolis, he's gone on, a 12-year odyssey?
Right.
And he's already done his growth. I mean, Superman he's come to Metropolis. He knows exactly who he is, and he knows exactly what he's about. And what's interesting is he thinks he's got it all sorted, but he never suspected that he was going to come into conflict with somebody like Lex Luthor, who is willing to murder tens of millions of people for no reason other than to get real estate holdings. And the thing is, he's the most self-actualized character in the movie. But then he never suspected that he would ever come into conflict with somebody who would do something like that. That anybody on Earth would be that monstrous. That's what I think is really interesting, is how does a perfect person, individual, deal with a world that is more maniacal and horrifying than he could have ever possibly imagined. And that, I think, is another aspect to the Superman character that it's that the evil and the darkness in the human heart doesn't infect Superman's, and he needs to always find it within himself. How does Superman overcome the evil that is represented by Luthor and others?
Expanding on the Luthor idea, you're absolutely right. Luthor is the opposite. He represents exactly the opposite of Superman, which is important in storytelling. That's what makes awesome villains. And so much so, and I think that his characterization in this movie is really underrated, because he literally is the antithesis of the main character. I mean, whereas Superman is an open character who exists and shows no shame or remorse for who he is. I mean, he's celebrating it and everything and flying through the air. Luthor hides and lives underground and is very parasitic and greedy and selfish. And up until this point, it's very consistent with the traditional characterization of Luthor from the books. It's just sort of made into a believable real world character rather than a mad scientist or something like that. But he's still just as megalomaniacal. I think in this case they've turned him more into a Bond villain, like a really grounded Bond villain with who still wields a godlike power that's a force that can rival Superman.
And don't remember also, isn't it interesting how Lex Luthor is so self-aware of how evil he is? He doesn't call himself the greatest mind on Earth. He calls himself the greatest criminal mind of all time. He knows he's evil. And he also, remember the comment that he has when he first sees that Superman has landed on Earth, this amazing man with powers. He says, "It all seems so fitting, his landing here at this particular time, just as I'm about to execute the crime of the century. I need an opponent. Of course I do. This is the challenge. This is the game. Game on." You know, he knows it, so he knows he's the devil. He knows he's the polar opposite, apart from Zod.
Well, I think there's something that we haven't touched on in this whole discussion that's vitally important to the success of Superman the movie, and that is Superman is having a hell of a good time being Superman. In that opening montage where he rescues Air Force One, where he gets hit with a crowbar by one of the criminals, he's standing on the side of the building when the cat burglar is making his way up the side of that skyscraper. Superman is enjoying himself, and we as the audience are with him. We are enjoying him being Superman as much as he's enjoying being himself. And there's a great joie de vivre when you first watch that film, when he first makes his appearance known, that we are loving every moment that Superman is doing super feats to save people. And it culminates with him rescuing the cat in the tree. And it's so much fun. And it's such wish fulfillment, because there's a huge element of wish fulfillment on the part of Superman. We all want to be Superman. Male and females, we all wish for those powers of flight, those powers of invulnerability. We all want to be Superman. And the thing about, I think, these modern incarnations of superheroes is I think they trade off the idea that there's a joie de vivre to all superhero characters in their comic incarnations, in their initial incarnations. They're all happy-go-lucky characters. There's none of this morose, oh, woe is me. Because in this, when they first started out, these characters relished being who they were. And if you look at Superman the movie, Superman does relish that. What happened was, because and that suddenly, as our world became more and more gray and more difficult to navigate, when the villains suddenly were not as easily uncovered as they used to be in the days of yore, whether you had villains such as World War II or the big 60s villains of the Bond movies. In the mid-'80s, when Frank Miller and Alan Moore were writing these characters, they had to destroy those myths. And all of the joie de vivre that existed for superheroes was completely replaced by angst and darkness. And we can no longer have, if I was Superman, I'd be fucking stoked. I'd be having a great time all day long. I would not be sitting around going, oh, woe is me, the burden of having to help everybody. I can hear everyone crying out for help and there's danger. No way, man. Every day I'd put on an air show in a different city. I'd be like, why are you people fighting? Life's great. I would stop wars. I would be the most beloved figure on the planet Earth if I was Superman.
You already are, Rob.
I don't know, Rob. You sound more like Duff Man than Superman, but
no, but Rob,
it's party time. Oh yeah.
This is what I was talking about earlier. Rob is 100% right. That Superman, that element should be there. It shouldn't be sitting around like, my parents are dead. Like, we've got Batman for the sitting around being mopey. Like, Chris enjoyed being Superman. Clark enjoyed being Superman. And that's, you identify with that. Because, you're the same way. You're like, hell yeah, that's awesome.
Well, also, if you look at Bryan Singer's Superman, as much as I enjoyed the experience of working on it and watching Bryan work on it, Superman is not having fun being Superman at any time in that movie. Even when he saves the jetliner, he walks in and he says, it's still the safest way to travel. He still sees Lois Lane and he's like, oh man, after I save a plane, I have to harsh my mellow by singing this song that broke my heart. There's not one moment where Superman in that movie establishes that being Superman is so much fun.
Well, what's interesting is I halfway disagree with that. Superman doesn't do it, but Stephen Bender's Young Clark absolutely sells how fun it is to have those powers.
Yeah, but he's not Superman yet, and he's still
Zach,
a kid.
that's the thing, is it's you only get it when he's a kid. And
And he murders a guy.
Well, okay, I was thinking actually, the scene where he saves Kitty, he's actually kind of enjoying himself, I thought, but, that's just me.
Let's get back to something that Robert did want to mention before. What are our thoughts on the different versions of the film? Now, to me, I only watch the theatrical version. Because, I am so attached to it, I do get nitpicky. I like the new scenes in the extended version. The additional conversation with Jor-El and Superman talks exactly about what Robert was mentioning. Jor-El says, Superman says, you couldn't have imagined how good it felt. It's wonderful. I like also Luthor's gauntlet, of course, adds a rather crucial action beat to the film when it needs it. But I hate that stupid Clark, get up scene with Mark Kent.
You do hate that.
Ruins a perfectly placed, perfect distillation of the film. That it has to be.
Well, also it ruins the reveal that, like, how many years later has it been since Pa Kent died to Clark finally leaving? Because, it's supposed to be a reveal where we see her in the background. It's dim. The lighting. You only see her back, and it's dark, or it's dawn, and all of a sudden she looks outside and she's got the gray hair or the silver hair, and it's like, wow, it's been a few more years.
It has. And the only reservation that I've always had about the theatrical cut, and it's a small one, but it doesn't allow us to hear all of John Williams' score. He composed a lot of material for the Krypton section of the film, for example, which isn't heard in either home video version. It's only heard in the 3-hour TV version, which I happen to own. Starting from when Lara carries baby Kal-El into the room with the rocket ship, all the way up to the starship going through the roof and the destruction of Krypton, there is some unbelievably amazing music there, which we don't get to hear in the film, and I wish we did.
Well, it's good, but it's just like, oh, look, a stormtrooper. Hey, we hear Jarrell's using a lot of energy. Like, that's just stuff that needs to go.
I know.
Like, that stuff, that's pacing. That's, we keep using the word, I say it a lot, momentum. It's like, yeah, you need to get going, and that shit just stops the movie.
I'm just saying that every track on that score is a masterpiece.
You could argue it's his best score.
It's
absolutely
the best
score.
It is his best score. I'm not arguing that point. If you don't think that is the best score ever, I will.
I go back. Honestly, I go back and I know it's the cliche answer, but you really do like what is his masterwork. I go back and forth between E.T., Raiders, Superman, and Star Wars. It's hard, man. Those are 4 masterworks of music composing.
The Superman theme sounds like the Universal Studios theme. The 1930s, when it used to fire up before like what was it, like the Wolfman?
Wait a minute, you saying it's a rip-off? I won't hear this.
No. I'm saying like Williams draws from really interesting. Like when he does his Star Wars stuff, he draws a lot from like Tchaikovsky and stuff. But in this one, he's calling back to a lot of like older films to like really kind of drive that home. Like it's a classic movie and kind of plays it like a fairy tale, like a lot, like the it's good, man. I'm not saying it's bad. It's awesome.
I'm just
love it. Well, I own a bunch. I own the extended soundtrack and everything. I love it.
So I was going to throw the question out to everybody as far as your preferred version of the film. Robert, let's start with you. Is the extended version the one that you watch?
Yeah, I like that redone extended version that came out in the early aughts. I really do. I know some people object to the sound effects in it. That they for the 5.1 mix they added sound effects, but I really like that version of the movie. I think it's very fulfilling. And
what did they add, Robert? Just so the people who don't understand know what we're talking about.
Well, just that sound effects are accentuated. There's even like in the opening credit sequence when the credits are blasting by, they add more of the sound effects and things like that throughout the film because back when that movie was mixed, Dolby Stereo was pretty new, and now with modern technology, they can accentuate those things. And I'm not somebody that necessarily objects to those kinds of things, especially when it's not too over the top. But the theatrical version of Superman's great.
Robert's reminded me of something. I can't believe we haven't talked about it before. The credits. Now, the art of end credits after the film is still with us. There are plenty of really fantastic examples out there of credits which end a film these days. The ones at the end of Captain America, for example, I thought were wonderful. Everything that Disney and Pixar do these days, their end credits are wonderful. I thought watching Wreck-It Ralph was worth it just to watch those end credits. But why does nobody do epic opening credits anymore? Nobody does anything. Nobody has the guts to let you spend 5 minutes looking at names. Now, if you show them the way... Except for Bryan Singer, obviously. But the only reason he's doing it, of course, is because it's a nostalgic pilgrimage to this movie. And even in Superman Returns...
Well, those weren't the original opening credits to Superman Returns. Those were done at the 11th hour by Kyle Cooper, who did the opening credits to 7. The original opening credits to Superman Returns I used on...
the documentary.
Yeah, the documentary where you see newspaper headlines explaining what Superman was for the 5 years that he was gone.
Yeah, then they replaced the whole intro with just some title card.
And it was like 2 minutes long. But why do you think this is that nobody anymore has the courage to do amazing opening credits and just let us watch them to start the movie? That the credits of this movie are the opening salvo, and by the time that they're done, and obviously the music plays a huge part, but once they're done, you're there for the next 2.5 hours. Maybe it's because movie scores these days, not even Williams is as good as it used to be. I don't know what it is, but we don't get them like this at all anymore.
Yeah, it's a good idea too because it would give people time to find their seats and sit down. Because I got way too many people interrupting movies while it starts. It just starts right away, and you got people sitting down and yelling, "Is that seat taken? Whose jacket is this?" All this stuff, you know.
You're absolutely right about that, and I think home video is really to blame. The idea that movies are no longer sacred, and being I think a little older than you guys, I would go see movies growing up, there was a certain reverence because you never knew if you were going to see them again. There was no home video, and if you have to wait until a movie showed up at a revival house, if you even had one, or when it showed up on television, which could be years later. So when you sat down and watched a movie in a theater, and usually a big, gigantic auditorium, and I saw Superman the movie in a gigantic auditorium, the same place I saw Logan's Run, and the same place I saw Star Trek The Motion Picture. And to be sitting in a theater and see images that had never before existed in human history, and to be there and experience them, it was so broadening in terms of your imagination and what was possible. It was almost like dreams really could come true. And I mean, seeing the end of Close Encounters was tantamount to seeing Jesus come back to Earth for me. I mean, it was a religious epiphany watching these things. And as a 10-year-old watching Star Wars, I can't tell you, when that movie was over, I was so profoundly affected. I mean, people talk about, yes, Star Wars changed my life, but it really changed my life to the point where I didn't even know that was possible. Science fiction movies for me had only existed on television. And to see it in a gigantic, I didn't see 2001 because I was too young, but it was so profound, and Superman had that same effect.
Yeah, it's weird because that's why even Quest for Peace for me still has that little sliver of watchability, just because growing up, like, you didn't see anything like that. And even though it's ridiculous, you never saw characters throwing the Statue of Liberty at each other fighting on the moon. So it was still awesome. Like, you're just like, whoa, it looks like these toys and comic books they exist in the real world.
A fetus
and it's mind blowing.
Son.
Right. And somebody puts a nuclear bombs in a giant net and just throws them.
And Meryl Hemingway can breathe in space.
Oh yeah. But like, you don't question that stuff. And like, I sound like a jackass making fun of.
No, we question that stuff.
But
yeah, we question that one.
No, but like, talking about like Logan's Run and all these older movies, like I remember growing up watching that stuff and seeing like even Cull, like a movie like Cull or Krull, the one with the
Krull.
Yeah,
where just having a cool looking weapon was like the only novelty of the movie.
Yeah,
and like, but they look like living Frank Frazetta paintings, and at least to a young person, you can't tell the difference between those things.
But I don't really subscribe to the effects argument, really, Randall, because I personally believe that if you look on the expressions of a 10-year-old's face when they've just stumbled out of an IMAX theatre, for example, having seen The Avengers or Avatar, they're getting the same experience that Robert got when he was young, I believe, personally. I don't think that ever goes away. I mean, I still think there are people hitting those marks, and we've all, we can't appreciate it, but, when we're old, and the youngsters of today, they're doing these kind of shows, that's what they're going to be talking about. And God willing, they're going to be talking about Man of Steel too. That would be my wish and my dream, but who the hell knows, right? Now, I know where Robert's coming from, but of course, I was born in 83. I think, I don't know what order I saw them in, except that I know I saw Superman 2 last. I even saw Supergirl before I saw Superman 2. Isn't that weird? Wow. Who knows how this happens? But I had Superman the movie. I know, but we'll get there. But I saw Superman the movie on tape. But the reason why it means so much to me is because Superman the movie is the reason that I am here talking to you right now. This was the film that made me a geek. That brought me to share geekiness and love for a very specific thing, in this case a film, with other people. on that new and magical place called the internet back in 2000, I think, and allowed the dominoes to tumble from there. I doubt there's anybody our age that didn't find the web through their love of something specific like that, be it a film like Star Wars, or a TV series, or a game, or a hobby, or anything. And I was always aware of the Superman movies, but I never really took the time to appreciate them and really watch them and pay attention until my teens. And by the time I was done with the first 2 films, I was seriously hooked. And I wanted to know more about how they were made, so I finally got on the web and I found a little website called Superman Cinema. And from there, I realised how little I actually knew about what is, to this day, one of the most fascinating makings of a film series in the history of film. There is so much to it, so much still that actually hasn't been covered. There's still a lot of controversy and bad blood, and of course when we talk about Superman 2, I think we're going to get into a lot of that. And it seemed to me that Superman the movie was an independent production of these wild-card foreign producers. There was this whole other version of Superman 2 which I had no idea about. There was the missing footage from Superman 4, and all of a sudden I realised why so much of that movie made no sense. Supergirl was shit, no matter which version you saw. I just devoured all this information, and I joined the forum there in 2006, the year of Superman, when Superman Returns came out, and they released everything on DVD. And of course, you know, it was a pretty obsessive year. I was doing nothing but hanging out there, but there was a link on that site that led me to another site called the Movie Blog, which was run by John Campier at the time, who now does AMC Movie Talk. And he did a show that talked about the cancelled Superman 5 projects. I liked their show. I hung out there for years. I met Jamie. And eventually, after years of talk, we decided to give our own show a go. And here we are. And of course, as that's continued over the years, I've been able to meet wonderful people like Randall, like Justin, like Robert. And so how can it not be that special to me? You can't underestimate the importance of film. You can't say, it's just a movie, Phil. Not when it's brought me this far. The fact that the film is fucking marvellous is just a side note. And the music's pretty good too. So, folks, we will be back in December to do our last ride on that. And I know the questions that I'm going to get about, you know, other kind of shows and specifically about Super Moan and stuff. And absolutely, I'm hoping that we can do it. But I just got to be honest with you, and this is why I never officially confirmed it. I just don't know. You have no idea how many times I wanted to go. I'll tell you this. You have no idea how many times I wanted to go on Twitter and just post on there a big iconic silver S and say, coming soon. You've no idea how much I wanted to shout it from the hills that, you know, I was working on it. But fate steps in and, you know, it's a huge project to do, and it's something that I really, really want to do, but it is just not doable this year, certainly, unfortunately. But you never know. Certainly, this year is adequate testament. You never know what's around the corner. So we'll see. We'll see. But whatever we do, we will, through the magical power of Skype, keep you guys with more entertainment as soon as we have a good reason to actually do stuff. Jamie and I will unite, we'll get all our friends on that we can, and we'll give it to you, because you deserve it, and you're always there for us when we send you a show. So we'll keep doing it for you, just every now and then. That's all it'll be. Every time will be special, because every time will be a reunion. That's all it'll be. That sound good to you, Jamie?
Sure.
Awesome. Right, folks. Well, we'll see you in December. I don't think there's much more to say than that. Thank you very much for all your time. Look for me on Twitter with my various adventures. Look for Jamie doing the same thing. Enjoy Star Wars. We'll tell you what we think of it very, very soon.
May the Force be with you.
Indeed.